Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud. Today we're going to be talking about the Astrology of March 2026. I hope that you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon as I'm recording this on February the 20th. Hope that things are going well this week. Lots going on. We are in between eclipses. We're in the Bardo period, the in-between space between the new moon solar eclipse and the full moon lunar eclipse. We've got Saturn-Neptune conjunction happening today as I'm recording this. All sorts of stuff coming up. We're going to be breaking it all down. We've got a lot of different layers to this. We've got big picture thoughts. We've got everything emerging from the beams. We've got Cazimis. We've got Jupiter and Mercury direct, benefic enclosures. We're going to talk about the new and the full moons. We're going to go through it in great detail, discuss it, see how it's playing out within your experience in your life, and co-create something together here. Spend a little time, create a little community. So if you are joining me, let me know in the chat. Let me know where you're stopping in from. It's always nice to hear from you in the chat, and to be able to do this work with you is always an honor. All right, a couple announcements before we get going, friends. We're doing the Astrology of March 2026 today. You can find me over at spencermichaud.com. I do have offerings, readings, if you want to be able to reach out for a reading, if you'd like to be able to get a little bit more insight into what's going on in your own life. If your interest is piqued by some of these astrological observations of the collective, maybe there's something that is going on in your life that you need to talk out, that you need a friend to kind of look at the chart with you and talk out some of the experiences that you're having through the lens of astrology, through the language of symbols, and see how we can kind of co-create and work together with fate to be able to maybe nudge things in a more positive direction. I have all sorts of different offerings over there. You can find that at the Book Now button at spencermichaud.com. I also have a webinar store over there, where I have a number of different offerings. You can find all of the Deccan webinars, part of which you will see a little bit of my research material here today. You can also find a Dignity and Devotion series that I did with my beautiful partner, Tanya Andrews of Third Coast Mojo, where we're helping you to create a devotional practice with the 7 traditional planets, how to do elections, how to mitigate any challenging placements that you might have in your chart. Let's say you have Saturn, like Saturn right now is in its fall in Aries. Maybe you need a little help with Saturn. There's ways in those webinars to help guide you through the challenging times. We also have a business, or she does. I feel like we've kind of worked together on this a little bit, but it's mostly Tanya. Third Coast Mojo at Etsy is a beautiful, beautiful expression of her skills and talents, where she is making all these wonderful oils and soaps that are magically elected. She chooses the elections herself. She has been studying this for a number of years. We do talk about some of the election placements sometimes, but this is Tanya's baby, and she does an excellent, fantastic job. She just made some wonderful new Glamour Magic Venus in Libra soap that is restocked. It is gorgeous. Look at this beautiful picture. It's stocked, chock full of beautiful magically elected herbs, oils with I believe there was a Spica election with that, Venus in Libra 3. Just really great stuff, beautiful stuff. She has all sorts of wonderful offerings over there, including this Get Lucky Hoodoo formulation with Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter in its exaltation, a planet associated with good luck. Also other offerings, Law Keep Away with Mercury and Virgo. If you're needing to go do some justice work out in the world and you're worried about coming in contact with corrupt forces, which is seemingly on the rise every single day, that's a great way to maybe keep yourself a little extra safe out there. Venus and Pisces Come to Me oil. If you're trying to attract love into your life, that is a great option as well. And then finally, Saturn Scientific Method with Saturn and Aquarius. Right now, that's a really good one to utilize if you're working with the greater malefic planet Saturn, where right now it's in its fall. Right now it's in Aries. It's in a place that is a little bit challenging for it. Using astrologically elected materia while Saturn was in Aquarius can help you have the necessary mental discipline to see things through with patience and to build the structures in your life to create better security for yourself and your community. And Saturn in Aquarius can help you give the big picture. It can help you find solutions to problems that have been challenging for quite some time. And again, the ability to delay gratification until the job is done well and correctly, I think is something that Saturn, and especially in this this area can really help with. So go check her out on Third Coast Mojo and help support both the channel here and Third Coast Mojo. You can also subscribe to a newsletter that I have where you will get updated as to when I'm going live, as to new offerings from Third Coast Mojo, little songs of the week. Well, this week was a song by Royksop, which is, I think, a Scandinavian band who is kind of like a dream pop band. Really cool. I've been listening to a lot of that kind of dream pop shoegazer music lately, but there's Sordid Affair was the track of the week. It was a really good one. Check that out on the newsletter. You can find all the links over there as well. You can also support the work that I'm doing here today by purchasing a super chat while I'm live on YouTube, or going to a Patreon site called buymeacoffee.com, where you can become a patron channel, support in that regard. It really helps me to keep the lights on here. I put a lot of energy and effort and preparation into this, and there's a lot of services that I have to pay for to produce this show each week. So all of your donations go into helping me continue to do this work. So thank you for those of you who have been able to support the channel. Easiest thing you can do right away without any financial commitment is like the video, subscribe to the channel. That helps immediately and helps to kind of get the message out to the most amount of people. So we're talking about the Astrology of March 2026. We've got a friend stopping in. Kia ora, Spencer and friends. Nice to see you, Karen. What's up, Karen? Karen is joining us from New Zealand, which is always an extreme honor. Just to have people joining us from all over the world, this global community, getting global perspectives on the unique challenges we face as human beings, I think is so very important. It's a value that I hold very deeply and very dearly. I believe Karen is also involved with the Indigenous community in New Zealand, which is also something that I have a lot of passion for supporting and learning from and about. So thank you so much, Karen, for being here today, and kia ora to all of you over in New Zealand. Thank you for joining us today. Okay. Astrology of March, a couple things, big picture thoughts. We're in a pretty interesting time as human beings right now, is what I will say. A lot of changes, a lot of potential for changes, a lot of feelings of frustration, a lot of feelings of the earth kind of trembling below us, and the earthquakes and shocks of our systems crumbling and needing to be changed. We have been living through, I think, the end of an old way of doing things. In traditional astrology, we measure kind of ages of humanity through Saturn and Jupiter conjunctions in different elements. So for example, every 250 to 300 years or so, it's the exact timing is a little bit flexible. The Saturn and Jupiter will come together in like Earth signs, which was the last cycle that we just experienced, the Earth age, I guess you could say. Now, many people are familiar with like, oh, are we starting the age of Aquarius and all of these things? Traditional Hellenistic astrologers would think about it slightly differently through these Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions. And recently, in about 2020, we had a Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius, in the air sign of Aquarius. And we will have subsequent Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions in air signs moving forward for the next couple hundred years. So there are big shifts in the way that we look at how we organize ourselves as human beings. And one of the things that the transitions from Earth to air, we had the Earth age very much dominated by the Industrial Revolution, right? The ability to become more efficient in turning natural resources, gifts, natural capital into products that could be sold for money, for growth. We had a lot of physical growth that happened on the planet during that period of time, for human beings in particular. That's what I mean. And now we're switching into a new age where we may need to decentralize some of those. We may need to come up with new solutions for the problems that we're changing into. And we're right at the beginning of that transition. the old ways of doing things, of taking the gifts that Mother Earth gives us and turning them into products, services, and growing exponentially without any rest or without any consideration, and with the waste and with the harm that we're doing to each other, let alone other creatures that we share this planet with. Those types of things may need to change. And I think that we're starting to see the extreme of the old order attempting to hang on to the old ways. And that to me is very interesting. You are seeing the people who came and rose to power through these Earth age means doubling down on all of the things that created massive amounts of wealth for them and really did a lot of harm spiritually, physically, ethically, to the planet, to each other, to vulnerable populations around the world. And now we are seeing the need to tell a new story. And I think as a collective, we are ready. I don't know about you, but I've been ready. I was born into this world, and I was born as a healthy skeptic, right? Someone who had a lot of healthy skepticism about the systemic challenges that we face, the big picture of things. Now, I've had my own blind spots around some of those things that have come to light over the course of my life, and that I've worked very hard on trying to incorporate new perspectives and things of that nature. But overall, I think that these have been things I've been chewing on for much of my adult life. And it seems that people are finally starting to maybe catch up with those feelings. And I don't know if I don't know if it means I'm ahead of my time, or I've just been tapped into something. Doesn't mean I'm special or anything like that. It just means that I'm seeing more openness to the things that I've been feeling for a long period of time. And part of those things are considering the ramifications of our actions for each other and for the planet. As I've been studying a lot of economic theory and thought, which to me is the foundation for a lot of the challenges that we're going through as a community right now, I'm learning terms around this, the externalization of costs. And how do we start internalizing the cost to the planet, the cost of moving massive amounts of products from one area of the country to the other, from one country to another? How do we deal with the exportation of violence and exploitation to developing nations around the world to support a Western way of life, Western comfort, Western security? Those are all questions that are really coming up to me right now. And the astrology, and I'm doing this kind of introduction because the astrology, I think this month in particular, is very important as far as emerging consciousness and awareness of these challenges. There's so many things we can get upset about lately if we're paying attention. Now, one thing I like to do on this channel is I like to hopefully try to inform myself first, so that when I get upset about something, it's not just directionless anger, right? I don't like getting angry without purpose. I would rather stay peaceful and calm and centered. But there are times when there's just so many things happening that we have difficulty processing it all in real time. I hope that by going through these astrological transits with you, that we're helping to calm the waters a little bit. But there's some things this week that have been on my mind that have been making me upset. And I'm sure a lot of you as well. You know, first of all, just the horrific things that we're seeing coming out of the Epstein files and the abuses of power. All of that is just infuriating, maddening, horrifying that there's accountability that's not being had, especially in America. The other thing that's on my mind today, as I'm thinking about how to craft a new global awareness that is healthy for each other and the planet, was a executive order that was passed in service of protecting Bayer and Monsanto in their production of glyphosate, which is a chemical that has been proven to cause cancer amongst people, that has been sprayed on our crops and used in military weapons and things of that nature. Very, very frustrated with that today. And a lot of the propaganda that came out of the MAHA movement, which is the Make America Healthy Again movement, that a lot of people used as a justification for voting for against their other best interests, is, now let me get this straight. I'm not a Trump supporter, not a MAGA, not a MAHA, not any of that. I don't support any of it. But there are some overlaps when it comes to hope that we can start making things a little bit healthier by taking chemicals out of our food chain, food supply, etc. And I'm curious today in the community, those of you who may have supported that movement, the RFK Jr. movement, how are you feeling today? How are you feeling as far as your, as far as being able to feel like your interests are being supported within that? It's an interesting thing that we're happening. It feels like all of the masks, all of the illusions are being pulled away. The curtains are being pulled away. The things that were promised are starting to be shown to be false. The things that the little tiny crumbs of like hope that we had, that the people in power right now, especially in America and in other places, had anybody's best interest in mind, besides large corporate monopoly and oligopoly, right? Or kleptocracy powers. All of that's being stripped away. And I start off with this because I think it's an excellent opportunity to start saying, what happens next? What do we want to craft next? And I'm talking about this under the auspices of Saturn conjoining Neptune today, as I am recording this. Okay, a very powerful aspect that speaks towards maybe wanting to dismantle old illusions, maybe wanting to speak truth to power, especially to rampant patriarchy and excessive toxic masculinity and toxic yang energy. And this is going to be a continuing story that we have throughout the month of March. So I start here because there's so many things that are happening. There's voting rights things that are trying to be stripped away from women in America. There is toxic chemicals being protected from liability. And let me tell you, if you are interested in that Monsanto thing, I won't belabor this point too much longer, but the reason this is happening, the reason that executive order has happened, is because Monsanto just lost a $7.5 billion lawsuit, for a class action lawsuit from cancer survivors or people that lost people to cancer, where they had to pay that out on Tuesday of this last week. And their whole business model was completely like in danger of going bankrupt because of this. And literally the next day, they're getting an executive order, probably through some sort of political bribe or monetary bribe, that protects their interest in and protects them against further liability. These are the types of things that when we start to become aware of them, we start to ask questions about how do we get out of this? How do we get out of this thing where we have to swim so hard upstream to be healthy, to be kind, to have justice and fairness in this world? And I think a lot of these things are really coming up in the collective. And I want you to frame all of what I talk about today within some of these challenges that we're experiencing, because they're coming at us fast and furiously. Saturn in Aries isn't messing around. It says, here's a bunch of problems you have to deal with right away. Okay. And I do think there's hope within this too. There are so many things emerging from the beams with these big picture thoughts. I'm just going to check in the chat real quick here, and then we'll get back to our big picture thoughts. KWOW is joining us. Good afternoon from North Carolina. Nice to see you, KWOW. Love to see you in the chat every week. Thank you so much for being a good supporter of this channel. Javier is here. Says, one step at a time. Hey, all. Much love to all. Nice to see you, Javier. Hope everything's going well for you north of the border. Amara is here. Says, hey, Spencer, how you doing? I got to meet one of my community members here yesterday. Amara's been in town for a conference in my hometown of Ypsilanti, and we just had a wonderful walk around the beautiful lake, and we saw some pelicans and the swans, and it was really nice. Mara, thank you for joining us today. If you're around in my area, friends, go check out the Convocation Conference at the Marriott in Ypsilanti. It's a magical conference, and Mara's giving some talks, and she's very knowledgeable and just a really kind soul, and really nice to see you here, friend. Rose is here. Howdy. What's up, Rose? Says, just heard that this morning. Took a few days off social media. Rose says, yeah, the glyphosate news. Yeah, it's infuriating. That's one of my, we all have things that trigger us more with indignation. That's one of the things that is super personal to me as far as something that makes me really, really angry. Because my mother passed away from cancer, and she had a severe stroke after a breast cancer surgery, and a lot of there's a lot of connection in my mind with the types of just toxicity that I saw her being around. She was someone who liked a lot of fragrances and like petroleum-based fragrances. She used cleaning products a lot that were toxic. She ate food that wasn't the greatest, that was probably pumped full of some of these chemicals. So this is something that's really like very personal to me. And we all have little things like that where we've been touched a little bit. The problem is touched a little closer to home, and it can really trigger strong emotions about it. So the glyphosate thing is so challenging to me because it's, I love food too. I'm a foodie. And to see people just getting sick from just something that should be so healthy and beneficial to us and bring us joy, it's just infuriating to me. So yeah, and Rose is saying, love the RFK Kid Rock video, which it's hard to tell what's real or not anymore. The first time I saw that, I'm like, this has to be AI, right? But it wasn't. Like, that's another problem that we have, is in this post-truth era, they'll flood the zone with these things so that we question whether actual things are happening that could be incriminating evidence of crimes or of just stupidity. And yeah, both of them huge hypocrites. Susanna is here. Moi from Finland. Nice to see you, Susanna. I love getting Susanna's perspective too. Finland has, from what I understand, a beautiful prime minister who has been trying to put into place a lot of well-being economic policies that are community wealth building policies that have a lot of, I think, really good ideas that we can learn from. So Susanna, tell us more about how government's going in Finland and more ideas about helping to save the planet by working together. This is why we have this global community here. We need to hear your voice today. So moi to all of my Finnish friends as well. Rose says, thankfully, a few of our elected officials are already talking about making the list of what needs to be fixed and accountability after this is over. It's going to take a while for sure. And maybe that's part of it, Rose. Maybe this is a point in this cycle, as we learn as astrologers, we're all in a much larger cycle. Sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. And we might be at that point. Again, I think this is I hope that this is the last gasp of an old narrative, an old story, an old way that once was successful for some people that is no longer successful for everyone, only successful for a small handful of people trying to do things the old way. And we may have to see and have the, like I said, the veil pulled back a little bit to see that, whoa, to keep this thing alive, we're having to commit horrific atrocities and corruption. And that's no longer sustainable. So, and it never was for a lot of people. Let's just be real clear about it. The system that we have created through the Earth Age was not sustainable for people of color, was not sustainable for people in developing nations, it's Southern Hemisphere people. It has never been fair for those folks. It was just kind of, there was this very romantic, westernized vision. Rose, here's an interesting thing. Last night I watched a movie from the 90s. I've been watching, like, I'm going to date myself, but sometimes I'll just, when my partner and I are thinking about watching something like on a streaming service or something, we have an antenna that gives us these digital channels that are sort of like cable, but it's like cable for old people. And there's all these movie channels. And we sometimes we just get stuck watching the first thing that comes on. And this channel that it's been turning on to has all these 90s movies on it. And what I'm noticing is there was a lot of movies in the 90s that had this Western idealistic kind of tendency to them. This reinvigoration of the beauty of Western landscapes, spacious Western landscapes in the United States. I'm speaking about, yeah, like Tubi, yeah, something like that. It's similar. This is one's called Cinevault, but it's fraught with commercials. I don't know if I would always recommend it. It's just kind of what's there. But the movie I saw last night was Legends of the Fall with Brad Pitt, Julia Ormond, Anthony Hopkins. Excellent movie, right? Excellent movie. And but it's part of this whole like set of movies that was very impactful for me as a young teenager. Dances with Wolves, Legends of the Fall, A River Runs Through It, Tombstone, all of these sort of like neo-Western kind of things that show these vast, beautiful landscapes. This idyllic, like, kind of like, let's go off in the West and like take care of ourselves in this pioneering spirit. And I think that this was a real driving factor, this personal ability to like pull yourselves up by your bootstraps and like go off and create a life in a just a vast, spacious, beautiful wilderness. But this is really something that is, I think, it can be a very toxic narrative for a lot of people in Western civilization, in America in particular. And I think that this is something that we romanticize. We romanticize that to our own detriment. We think that this is the American dream. It's one of the American dreams, right? Go get some land. And at one point in history, that was semi-viable if you were a white immigrant, okay, who came over to this country and was given some land, and you could kind of do something like that. And I say that very specifically because that option wasn't available for great swaths of the population. But I think that when we're talking about these larger scale issues, one thing that I'm really interested in is, instead of completely demonizing everything and everyone that came in the past, I want to say this was a phase of our growth. This was a part of a cycle. Now we're at the different part of the cycle. Because if we can do that, we can look at it a little bit more objectively. So I think that this is one of the things where we have to look at this in terms of a grander cosmic cycle, and that this is what we are tasked with unraveling. These are the knots we have to unravel right now to envision how we can be better citizens of this planet moving forward. Okay. Well, Rose says Fox owns Tubi now. This is the other thing. All of the huge media companies are buying up all of the little things. There's huge monopolization that's coming. We can talk about that a little bit today. That is a huge problem that I think most people can agree on both sides of the political spectrum, that monopolization is destroying our economy, destroying the ability to have free market competition. It's a problem. And it's something that we need to work hard as a community to like push back against, because when we monopolize things, we start to homogenize things. We start to squash diversity. Monopolization leads to fascism. And fascism is this kind of idealistic return to some purified state that is completely homogenized. And to me, as a student of nature and biodiversity, the diversity principle is so very important. We each have important gifts to offer to this world, and diversity actually makes us more resilient over time. This is why this is so dangerous, why trying to make everyone believe and think and look the same way is so, so dangerous. Everything about the natural world says that that is a death sentence. So as someone who firmly believes in the power and the teaching ability of nature, these are the types of things that we have to talk about to start to push back against. Javier says, funny you bring this up. I've been thinking about Zorro. Yeah, another movie that has some beautiful scenery in it, right? Just this beautiful landscapes in these films. Um, Also thinking about Saturn, Neptune, and the Spanish optimism and Don Quixote and all the downfalls. Right. Another example of colonization where the Spanish would come into Mexico, and there was probably, I don't know the all of the psychology behind that that culture's version of colonization with the Americas, but I'm sure that there's similar qualities with all of that. Susanna says, Spencer, I must admit I don't follow my country's politics much. Oh, Susanna, there's so much going on. I'm avoiding anxiety. You know what? I can appreciate that. There are only so many things that we can handle day to day, but I would encourage you to at least become informed on what's going on in your own country for this simple reason, Susanna. What I've observed with your skill set, your gifts, your talents, you are an incredible artist, an excellent painter, a wonderful singer. And I think one of the artist's important jobs is to reflect back to their community the reality that we are living in, and maybe even greater truths about it. And I think it's important to at least be somewhat informed as to what's going on in our communities as artists, to be able to reflect those issues back to our communities and help them to see the beauty in the world. And you do a great job of that with just your art in general, just reflecting back beauty into the world. But I think it could have an even more powerful impact if it is informed by the challenges that are going on around too. This is not me like, giving you a hard time or anything. I think we all have to become centered. We all have to take our time and pace ourselves and do what we can and utilize our own specific gifts to create the new narrative and the new story. But I'm realizing that it is a luxury to not follow politics. It is a luxury that I'm not willing to externalize to other people any longer. And I think it's super important that we start to internalize the cost of our peace. This is something that I was really doing a lot of meditation on lately. Our own peace is coming at a cost of other people's suffering sometimes. And that's no longer an exchange that I'm willing to make, because I'm aware that that's happening. The awareness of that says my inner peace is not worth someone else's suffering at this point. I'm going to learn to be a little bit more comfortable with being a little bit more uncomfortable so that I can stand up and speak out for those who don't have the ability to do so. So join us, Susanna. Join us in this journey that we're going on. And let's be like Frodo carrying that ring. Susanna is one of our Tolkien fans. Let's do the hard thing that we need to do. Like Gandalf would say, Frodo's like, I wish this hadn't happened in my time. And Gandalf says, we don't always get to choose what happens in our time, but we get to choose what we do with that time. So care about you, Susanna, and you're a valued member of our community. And let us know what's going on that's your homework assignment. Let us know what's going on in your country. Because honestly, Susanna, there's some good things and good examples that are coming out of Finland that we could learn a lot from. And maybe you can be an ambassador for us. And I would love that. I would love that, friend. Rose says, I saw Dances with Wolves the second day it was out. Reminds me of Yellowstone, where I was going every summer back then. Did I tell you that I was there in 95 when they released the wolves back into the park? I love that movie. That was one of my... I just get choked up even thinking about it. I love it so much. It's just so beautiful. And there's so many... man, it's been a week, hasn't it, friends? I get a lot of emotions thinking about that film. I'm just going to take a second. Because I want to be able to verbalize this, why it's making me so emotional. That film to me represents a lot of things. As a very young person, I felt really out of alignment with my community culture. I moved around a lot as a child and just felt out of place. And one of the main things I think with that movie, regardless of some of the challenges around the white savior complex and some of these romanticizations of indigenous cultures. I think there is a lot of us who have been a part of this colonization of the United States history that just have felt terrible about it for a long time. And being able to integrate into a way of life that seems much more connected to the earth, and even just finding community when you are supposed to be enemies. That all of those themes are just so powerful, and it's just framed in these beautiful, beautiful landscapes. I'm sure that there's criticism of that movie that can come out, but I really do think that it was such a powerful statement. I'm just even thinking about, this was one of the first times, and maybe this was happening in the 90s too, where we were bringing a lot of awareness to the complete destructiveness of that period of time, of the spread west of colonialism, the destruction of the herds and herds of buffalo, just wanton destruction, where people were just like going and killing thousands of these beautiful animals and just leaving them to rot after just taking one little piece instead of utilizing the entire animal. And those images have just stuck with me. I think I saw that movie when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and those images just like so fucking powerful, you know? So yeah, that movie brings up a lot of feelings with me. River runs through it as well. Like that film, just being in the flow state in nature, really important. Yeah, so good call on that one. Yeah, Chumani tu Tanka Obawachi. Is that a phrase from the movie? Tell me what it says. Like, all I remember is Tatanka, buffalo, right? Just them learning to communicate was just, that's so magical. Just like they didn't even speak the same language, but they found ways to communicate non-verbally, and Kicking Bird, like just being able to meet John Dunbar halfway. So much wonderful, like almost Libran qualities to it. Just fill my heart with just absolute joy just thinking about that film. Just a really formative film for me in my life. So anyway, I digress. Marcia is here. Says, hey, Spencer, just got on. Always enjoy your knowledge and insight. I lost my kitty on the 17th. It's been a hard week. I'm sorry, Marcia. One of the hardest things we can possibly do is say goodbye to our cherished fur companion. So I'm sorry to hear that, friend. Hang in there. Well, it's been, eclipses really do bring us a lot of changes. But we're here for you and sending you some love, friend. Rose says, watching Northern Exposure now with different glasses. Maurice reminds me slightly of a nicer orange dumpy. I would like to watch that show again. I don't think I watched the whole series. I watched a few episodes here and there, but I'd be curious to see. There's another show, North of North, that reminds me of that show, but from the indigenous perspective. And I'd be curious to see what the lens was like through sort of the white perspective, I guess you could say, in the 90s, and how those lenses are different in similar areas of the world. Rose says Graham Greene was a magnifico. Some days I feel like stands with fists too. Yeah. Those actors were incredible. Just an amazing movie. Like I said, it was very, very formative for me. Sending you a hug, Marcia. Yeah, we're all sending you hugs, bud. Rose says I've watched it about 10 times. Dances with Wolves. Yes. Kicking Bird. Yep. Yeah. I can't remember how many times I watched it. More than I can count. My grandfather had it as on VHS, and I would just watch it all the time. It was one of my favorites all time. Susanna says Dances with Wolves was a big thing for me. It's almost too hard for me to watch it anymore. The fact that culture is lost in the wolf. Yeah, really emotional film, and very melancholy and bittersweet, because you can see the changes happening and the loss of that. I guess a sense of purity around it. I guess a sense of living in harmony with the land, and exploring the colonization of those spaces, and the horrific violence and injustice that was perpetrated on the indigenous peoples in the Americas. It radicalized me, like, as a young person for the rest of my life, and I feel like I will continually be hopefully trying to speak towards the protection of those beautiful wild spaces and the people that inhabit them. Rose says, I have it on SSD now. Nice. All right, friends. So this was like a emotional Pisces sun experience where we are trying to unpack the changes that we're experiencing as a community, as a culture. Susanna says, wolves are unfairly hunted in Finland now. It's a big discussion here. Yeah. I mean, another powerful statement from that film is the relationship with the animals and with the wolves and with the buffalo, and really powerful for sure. All right. So we got our first cry out of the way for Pisces season. Sometimes we just have to let it out, you know? Sometimes we just have to let it out. And let's talk a little bit about these big picture thoughts. I love being able to connect with all of you and have these memories and see these formative experiences with you, because what we're doing when we have those discussions is we're contextualizing this astrology. The thing that I would like to help develop even more in this world, especially this world, the astrological world and community, is taking the abstraction out of these planetary ideas and placements and making them real. We have to make them real through sharing our stories and our feelings that come through us with these planets. This is how we learn how to utilize this information effectively, rather than just having it just be this abstraction. And when we keep things into abstraction, we lose sense with the humanity behind it. We ground this wisdom through these sharings of the stories. So there's, that's the reason we take the time to have these discussions. So a couple things to think about. Everything's emerging in March. We have Venus emerging as an evening star. We have Mars emerging as the evening star. Mercury retrograde emerging as an evening star. Mars is emerging as the morning star. Excuse me, I think I may have said evening again. Mercury retrograde as morning star. So all these emerging planets are moments of phasis in Hellenistic astrology that are moments and omens that speak. They speak very loudly. Like they are moments where planets become visible once again. We've had all these things happening behind the scenes. We've been cooking up these actions that we're going to take out in the world, or that we're going to observe out in the world. And March is a time where a lot of these things that have been cooking behind the scenes are going to start to become more visible. We also have Mercury retrograde, stationing retrograde, Cazimi, not stationing retrograde. Mercury is going to Cazimi in its retrograde phase, its inferior conjunction with the sun. Saturn is also going to conjoin with the sun, which is called Cazimi, in the heart of the sun. That means both Mercury and Saturn are going to renew themselves in that solar furnace, which is very important. It will plant seeds for those new cycles moving forward. So we will discuss that today. Jupiter and Mercury will both be stationing direct during this month. Mercury is going to be stationing direct at 8 degrees of Pisces. Jupiter is going to be stationing direct at 15 degrees of Cancer. So Mercury stationing direct in its exile and its fall. Jupiter stationing direct in its exaltation. So a lot of the benefits that an exalted, greater benefic like Jupiter could bring us have been sort of held in check for a few months. And now some of those benefits may actually start to be able to be visualized and start to move forward. We've been reviewing how we want to protect and grow things into fruition. Now some of that growth and some of that protection can be utilized with a direct Jupiter moving forward. So I think it's a really powerful movement. We also have this month some benefic enclosures. Benefic enclosures are when the opposite sort of a malefic enclosure. A malefic enclosure is when we have a planet that's kind of got its back against the wall with Saturn and Mars making aspects. In this case, we have Venus and Jupiter making aspects to two planets. We have a Mercury benefic enclosure and a Saturn benefic enclosure. So there's a little bit of protection happening to those planets this month that we should talk about as well. Okay. All right. Rose says, Elaine Miles, that played Marilyn Whirlwind on Northern Exposure, ICE picked up and refused to acknowledge her Native American tribal ID. Fucking pricks. That makes me angry. There's an Aries moon today, so I think our fuses are short today, and our reactions may be visceral. But that's horrible. That's horrifying. Especially I can't begin to tell you how angry it makes me that not just with ICE trying to pick up like, quote unquote undocumented immigrants and things like that, but ICE picking up indigenous people is like the ultimate like fucking hypocritical bullshit I've ever seen in my entire life. But you all know this. If you've stuck around long enough on this channel after my, Spencer 2.0, who has not been afraid to speak out about these things a little bit more and is less concerned with making people upset, then you probably feel this, right? There's been a little bit of a transition in my own, I don't know, courage in speaking out about these things. I have been someone who has been conflict avoidant in the past for a number of reasons. It's a trauma response, but I can't push all those things down. Who am I protecting at this point? Fascists? Like, what? I'm protecting your feelings if you're a fascist? Fuck off. Like, right? So I don't care anymore about that. But that type of thing that you're describing, Rose, is really disappointing, disturbing, and not that we shouldn't be protecting even just the other people that are being picked up by ICE, but that is a secondary level to it that is infuriating. Rose says, it feels like you help give validity to our feelings. Thank you, Rose. I'm an emotional person. I'm a Cancer Sun, Cancer Mercury. And I think one of the Cancerian superpowers and sometimes fatal flaws is that we have the power of making, I call it the emotional cloud, where people are going to feel what we can feel. We're cardinal water signs. We can shift the emotional energy of a room just by radiating whatever we're feeling out there, for better or for worse. And I have been able to utilize this power in good ways in the past and in bad ways. And as a musician, as an artist, it was really a powerful tool, like being able to express and get people in the room to feel what you feel. In this work, there are some similar ways to do that. And I'm trying to figure out how to utilize that emotional energy towards the good, rather than fear-mongering. But sometimes we do have to call out some of the difficult things that we see to, like you said, to validate our experience. When we are dealing with people who are gaslighting us all the time, they're trying to invalidate our feelings, invalidate our experiences constantly. This is what's happening in our places of power right now. We see the corruption with our own eyes, and then we get told something completely different. And if we can emotionally validate each other through the lens of astrology, saying, no, you're not crazy. This is important stuff. That helps us to work through those things and not feel hopeless. Thank you, Rose. Appreciate it. Javier says, also shows their lack of knowledge. The goal is education. I feel sadness for all parties, to be honest. Shows the lack of knowledge for the administration. Is that what you're talking about, Javier? Yeah. Yeah, well, yep. There's a lot going on. Cancer Sun, Cancer Mercury conjunct Uranus too. There you go, Rose. Cancers unite. Right. We have our roles to play. I think that we can be emotional leaders for our communities. And sometimes that means our emotions are gonna overwhelm us. When we cry, when we get choked up, that's our emotions being so powerful that they're just overwhelming. Like having a Cancer Mercury, oftentimes what will happen is it feels like you're trying to communicate through 10 feet of water, right? When I'm really upset, it's hard for me to talk. I had this ever since I was a kid. If I'm truly angry, upset, sad, just overwhelmed, like getting the words from point A to point B is just almost impossible. This is why music is something that a lot of people with water placements in their charts really gravitate to, because you can express things through music that you can't always express through words or through your guitar or through just a being. So anyway, yeah. Okay, let's take a look at the medium range view. I'm going to take a stretch right here. We had a little bit of a longer introduction because we had a lot of things to process. We have a lot of feelings to process. I don't want to just launch into just telling you more abstract information without processing where we've been. You know, this is so important. So do me a favor while I'm taking my stretch, like the video, subscribe, take your own stretch, get your own drink of water, get a snack. If you want to contribute to the work I'm doing here, you can buy a super chat. But the easiest thing to do is to like the video, subscribe, tell your friends about it, and also get involved. Share some of these things in your social medias. I've been amazed at how my algorithm has changed since I've started interacting with different types of information. I've been interacting with a lot of well-being, economic, community wealth building things on Instagram, Facebook, etc. And it's amazing how it shifts. You know, it is the essence of being able to create your own reality, like the creative visualization kind of techniques, right? And the internet algorithm is sort of a physical manifestation of that. What we put our attention towards, we get more of. And if we start putting our attentions towards crafting a new story of how to organize society in a more just and fair and equitable way, we're going to get more of that. So that's why we talk about it here. I want more of it. I want these ideas to spread. And I think the astrology is right for that. Okay. So let's look at the medium range view. I'm going to give you some dates. Lunations for the month of March. We are still in eclipse season, friends. We just had a new moon solar eclipse on February the 17th. Earlier this week, Tuesday, as I'm recording this on Friday the 20th. We are in the middle of a transition period, a liminal space between eclipses. We just started the year of the fire horse, right? On the Lunar New Year on the 17th. We are in a time period, a tunnel, you could say, where things are kind of getting shaken up. You know, we have another eclipse, a lunar eclipse, a full moon lunar eclipse on the 3rd of March. This is where we're going to start to see the solidification of those things that have been up in upheaval in this time. 12 degrees of Virgo. So probably one of our last eclipses in the Pisces Virgo axis before we move really directly into the Leo Aquarius eclipses. We had an Aquarius eclipse, okay, but we're going to start seeing them more regularly over the Aquarius Leo axis. We have a last quarter moon on the 11th of March at 20 degrees of Sagittarius, squaring off with the Pisces sun. So those two decans often will speak towards sacrifices, physical or spiritual sacrifices that you have to make a dream come true. We may be questioning our physical sacrifices around this last quarter moon, trying to release the desire or the influence of pushing our bodies to their extreme to get something accomplished. We might say, you know what, I'm carrying too many burdens around this last quarter. I'm becoming the horse's skull, as Austin Coppock would talk about in 36 Faces. So how do we release some of those burdens? How do we delegate? How do we put down some of the sticks that you see in the 10 of Wands? We have a new moon at 28 degrees of Pisces on the 18th of March. Okay, so last decan of Pisces, the degree of exaltation for Venus. So there could be some really interesting, almost Venusian qualities to that new moon. And then we have a first quarter moon at 5 degrees of Cancer after the sun moves into Aries, right? After the sun moves into its exaltation in Aries at our spring equinox, a really important point in the solar year. We have a number of ingresses this month. Ingress is when a planet moves into a new sign. Mars will move into Pisces on the 2nd of March. Venus will move into its exile, out of its exaltation into its exile in Aries on March the 6th. This is the beginning of a transition of these planets out of Piscean placements into this huge stack up of planets in Aries. So this feeling, this impetus to start something new, to like Fight for what you believe in. This is going to be really concentrated energy in the sky as these planets start to move into Aries placements, okay? On the 20th of March, we have our spring equinox with the sun moving into Aries. And then on the 30th, Venus moves into her own domicile of Taurus, her home sign, where she has access to the resources of the earth and all of the beauty that comes through the natural world. We can start to appreciate that more at the end of the month. Solar phases. There's a lot of solar phases this month. So solar phases. Check in with the chat here. Oh my gosh, we got some nice comments coming in. Oh, I'm gonna come back to some of those so we can come in under 4 hours. All right. Solar phases are when a planet is either making a conjunction with the sun, emerging from under the beams, or going under the sun's beams, or turning retrograde or direct. That's what I consider a solar phase. On the 7th of March, we have Mercury cazimi in the heart of the sun, conjoining the sun. Mercury retrograde, it's called the inferior conjunction at 16 degrees of Pisces. Okay, so this is a renewal of mercurial energy in the heart of the sun on the 7th. The same day, Saturn goes under the beams at 2 degrees of Aries, conjoining Venus. Okay, so when Saturn goes under the beams, this does happen every year. We have a Saturn cazimi every year. The sun conjoins Saturn somewhere. This one's really interesting because this will be the first cazimi, I believe, that we have in Aries. I don't think that there was a Saturn cazimi last year. I think that Saturn was still in Pisces. This often will show us a dissolving of structures in society when Saturn goes under the beams of the sun. Saturn is sort of the agreements that we make with one another that bind us to one another. When Saturn is taking to its sickbed, like when it is under the beams, there is sort of this almost like a little bit of a chaos that can happen where the structures start breaking down. And then when Saturn becomes cazimi, which it will at the end of the month, we have the establishment of new structures. And then when it emerges from the beams, I'll give you the dates for all of these things, we can see those structures being implemented within society. Sometimes this is new laws. Sometimes this is new accountability that comes for various people, which there is plenty of people that need to be held accountable at this point. But keep your eyes on that Saturn going under the beams, because that can speak towards the breakdown of structures that have held things together over various periods of time. 2 days after that, on the 9th, Venus is going to emerge as the evening star at 4 degrees of Aries. Now, if you've been following the channel, there's a lot of details on here. Sometimes I get some details a little bit incorrect. I wanted to go back and say that I believe I talked about Venus emerging from under the beams a couple days earlier at 2 degrees of Aries. I know it's not a huge deal, but it's a big deal to me as a Virgo stellium. And I always want to go back and correct myself if I did something incorrectly. So 4 degrees Aries is when Venus is going to emerge as the evening star on March the 9th. So Venus emerging from the evening star, or as the evening star, in its exile, in a place where we might be attracted to individuating. We might be attracted to starting something new, of saying, I'm going to reject that which is not me. That becomes much more attractive in the first decan of Aries. We'll talk about that more as we get through our daily breakdown of this. Jupiter stations direct on March the 10th at 15 degrees of Cancer. Powerful degree for Jupiter. That is around very close to the degree of exaltation, somewhere between 14 and 15 degrees of Cancer. It also happens to be my natal sun degree. So I will gladly share some of what happens with Jupiter, when Jupiter stations direct on your natal sun. Hopefully it's something good. It sounds like it could be good. But for the collective, this is an ability to be able to protect and bring something to fruition that you've been trying to grow. One of the things about the second decan of Cancer is it's related to creating a safe space, a protected space, a walled garden, as Austin would say. It's showing us the actions that we can take to be able to protect something that we want to bring to maturity, okay? So the ability to bring something important to maturity, to give birth to something, is going to be supported once Jupiter is stationing direct. And that to me is very exciting. This is going to be a much more functional Jupiter moving forward. On the 15th, Mercury retrograde emerges as the morning star at 9 degrees of Pisces. So important information that could be coming our way, especially around unraveling the old narratives. We've talked a lot about Pisces 1 being related to old narratives that we have in our life that we're trying to move away from, right? That we're leaving behind material success in search of a higher purpose. We're trying to return home. We're hearing the siren song like Odysseus saying, you need to return home, but you don't want to get distracted by all these different, labyrinth mazes. When Mercury emerges from as the morning star at 9 degrees of Pisces, we might have some really important, profound realizations about our old stories. I've been going through this week too. I've been, not to get down another tangent personally story, but I mean, come on. Some of you come for the stories, right? I had an experience this week. Just speaking about Mercury emerging as a morning star in Pisces 1, I had an experience this week where I had unearthed from a little Harry Potter closet underneath my stairs some of my old sports cards from when I was a kid. I collected all sorts of sports cards. And for whatever reason, on the Facebook algorithm, it fed me up people that unpack sports cards. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And just out of habit. And now the algorithm is feeding me this. They're like, oh, you like it when people are opening packs of cards? We're going to feed you that every other post. And it made me curious about some of my old childhood sports cards and about collecting in general. So one of the old stories, here's an example of an old story of I'm trying to unravel, because one of the things I'm trying to avoid is I remember how addictive opening packs of cards was. It was basically like indoctrinating children into gambling. And it got way worse in the mid-90s. Before the mid-90s, baseball cards were like ubiquitous. There was millions of them made. They weren't really that expensive. You could buy a pack for like $1. The mid-90s, things changed. They started to like make more limited print runs of things. They started to put these really exclusive, rare inserts into these packs. And then they started charging a ton of money for the packs, to the point where when I was a teenager, instead of a $1 pack, you'd buy a pack for like anywhere between $6 to $8 or $10. And that was a lot of money for a little kid to buy packs. And it's gotten so much worse than that in the modern era, where we have literally people buying $800 boxes that have 6 cards in them. And those cards are really rare and exclusive, but you could very easily lose $800 if you don't get one of the one-of-one cards or the exclusive insert. And it's become a real toxic kind of hobby for adults rather than for kids. Now, that's a long-winded way of saying, how do we avoid the seductiveness of that? How do we go back and examine our stories? And it got me thinking about, what does collecting mean to me? Like, why do we want to collect? Why do we want to collect and organize? And it led down this rabbit hole of examining the psychology of collecting, the psychology really of hoarding too. And part of it, a healthy collecting habit helps us to create order out of chaos. There is a joy in putting something in order, things of like nature. There's a joy in being able to assert a little bit of control over our environments. There is a joy in the novelty, the excitement of maybe getting something new that you've never seen before. And part of why I was unraveling this was saying, how can I do this and get that same feeling? Because I was going through my cards and I lost track of all time and space. Like, I was up to like 2 o'clock in the morning one night, just sifting through these old cards. And it was like I was discovering them for the first time. And I missed that feeling. I missed the flow state, right? But it was encouraging me to ask the question of, how do I do that without falling victim to the gambling impulses of buying expensive packs of cards the consumeristic impulses that come through that, the accumulation that can be very toxic? How do I still get that feeling of creating order out of chaos? How do I still get the feeling of novelty and excitement in my life in a way that is healthy rather than toxic? So that was a journey into the labyrinth of my old story, of my old narrative, of the beliefs that shaped me. And when we have Mercury emerging as a morning star, you might be able to see some of the benefits of going back and examining some of the old things in your life that you once accepted as your reality, that helps shape your reality. I remember as a kid, like I anticipated going to the card shop, and I'd save up all my money from doing chores or from doing odd jobs around the neighborhood, and I'd hold these packs of hope in my arms, in my hands, and understanding that about yourself is really important. Astrologically, for those of you who are curious, I have Jupiter on a fixed star called Thuban at 7 degrees of Virgo. That's in the constellation Draco, the hoarding dragon, the guardian of the fruits of the Garden of Eden. So there is an impulse that's trying to come through me of trying to collect all of these things, and a little bit of a hoarding influence, right? A little bit of like, I was thinking about this. I had a friend whose dad owned a card store, and he had all this, like, it's basically the equivalent of being friends with Elon Musk. Like, whereas he didn't start off with nothing. He started off with the equivalent of an emerald mine, where he could take all those resources and start trading them. And like his dad would give him cars to trade. And he had no problem with the exchange part of it. But little old nostalgic Cancer me was like, I just want to collect these things because I love them, and I will never get rid of this cherished thing. If it came to me, it's mine now, and I will never get rid of it. But he would trade me for like players that I was interested in from the teams that I liked. And he would trade me for my really expensive, like, Michael Jordan cards or things like that. And it's just fascinating to me to see why we might want to hold on more tightly to something rather than be in the system of exchange. Some of that can be attributed to our natal charts, to the influences that are trying to work through us. Once we start to understand that, we can start to make better choices in the moment. So if you have influences in your chart that are creating a repetitive cycle, all of these influences are, whether we acknowledge it or not, by going back and examining those through the first decan of Pisces, we will be able to unravel that and start making conscious choices moving forward. Let's see. Devin's here. What's up? Dream of a solar punk future. I love it. I'm going to do that. Let's create it together. Rest in peace, Eric Dane. Yeah, terrible tragedy. ALS is terrible. This also possibly could be a tie-in with our glyphosate discussion at the beginning of our show today. A lot of those chemicals that are in our food have been shown to have connections with cancer, ALS, nerve diseases, and things of that nature. So, if we want to protect people from that, we need to pay attention to what's going on in the news. Rose says, did you cover February 24th ETA SOTU? Many doubt it will be live. So do you there are too many acronyms in that, Rose. Tell me more about it. Tell me more. Okay. Don't overeat yet. Feel like I'm shedding emotional attachments and layers. Rose says, storyteller collective rules. Yeah, we're storytellers here. I think the best astrologers are storytellers. Rose says, I always felt I missed out a lot during the 90s. I'm starting to feel lucky that I was going to Yellowstone, taking care of my mom and stepdad till the end. I took a trip out to Yellowstone when I was a kid in the 90s. It was another formative experience. Such a beautiful landscape. We drove from Wisconsin all the way out to Yellowstone, like 4,000 miles, however much it is. It was one of the best times of my life with my grandparents and my dad. Pluto crossed Yellowstone in my astrocartography map. Interesting. Devin says it's an interesting part of our psyche that is both resource hunting and also the fear of missing out. Yes, Devin. I've been going on the deep dive of saying, what is it that is so seductive about it? It's the same thing that makes foraging in the woods very seductive and satisfying. Foraging is like, oh, I was talking about this with my partner. She likes going out, and she's just, I just like being out in nature. And I'm like, I love the fact that I could find something very valuable that we could bring home, um, and it just taps into this very instinctual parts of ourselves. Repeat its name, Rose says. Thubun, at 7, yeah, Thubun, I believe. It is at 7 degrees of Virgo. It's a fixed star in the constellation Draco, and that's like the hoarding dragon kind of fixed star. Oh, State of the Union. Okay, State of the Union. I'll have to go back and look at your comment again. Did I cover the February 20th, 24th State of the Union? Many doubt it will be live. Maybe I did in the February one, but today we've sort of got to get through March as much as we can, Rose. I was a driver every year for 10 years, both ways. Ooh, nice. My Mercury has always felt like a resource gatherer, right? So maybe we have a similar Mercury with Mercury in Cancer. So back to our solar phases. Sorry for going every which way, sort of in this Odyssean path here. Mercury emerging from the evening star, 9 degrees of Pisces on the 15th. On the 16th of March, Mars is going to emerge as the morning star at 11 degrees of Pisces. This one, I will say, has some themes around Sorcerer's Apprentice energy, where we have to be careful about overestimating our abilities. I'll talk more about that when we get to that. Mercury is going to station direct at 8 degrees of Pisces on the 20th, around the spring equinox. And then the big solar phase of the month, I think secondary only to Saturn going under the beams and Jupiter stationing direct, is we have a Saturn cazimi, Saturn conjoining the sun at 4 degrees of Aries on the 25th. It's going to emerge as the morning star at 6 degrees of Aries on the 11th of April. So keep those dates in mind. 7th of March, Saturn under the beams. 25th of March, Saturn cazimi. Saturn emerging as the morning star on the 11th of April. Okay, big for the collective. Now, out of bounds planets and enclosures. We had some malefic enclosures, I believe, in the past month, where Saturn and Mars were making difficult aspects to planets, kind of hemming them in. This month we have benefic enclosures. From the 28th of February to March 5th, we have Mercury retrograde in benefic enclosure. So this is something where we might be able to communicate and make exchanges that have a little bit of extra support. It's going to end when the sun passes 15 degrees of Pisces. I'll show you that when we get to the chart, but the sun starts breaking it up. With these benefic enclosures, a planet can cast its ray in between the two benefics, Jupiter and Venus, and then it sort of breaks up that energy. Saturn will be in benefic enclosure from the 6th of March to the 8th of March, and it ends when Venus makes its conjunction with Saturn. Now, possibly the benefic enclosure could start on February the 28th. I have some questions about that, but I am more certain that it is a benefic enclosure from the 6th to the 8th. So your mileage may vary with that. Go look at it, see what you think. I'll talk about it when we get to it, and then you can make your own determination. The moon's going to be out of bounds from the 8th of March to the 14th, and then again from the 22nd to the 27th of March. So moon out of bounds, we might be a little tired. We might be having strong memories. We might be pushing our bodies beyond our normal limits. Those are the only out of bounds phases this month. There's no other planets that are out of bounds besides the moon. All right, so that's our medium range view. Okay. So now let's take a look at our more granular examination. And we're going to start with the sun in Pisces 2. We just talked about, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to outlay the themes that the sun is going to be drawing upon to radiate out into the world through this Decanic language. Now, I just kind of broke down Pisces 1 a little bit for you in my story about revisiting something from my childhood past to understand what effect it's having on me in the present. So we sometimes will leave material success behind. Like I was attempting to leave behind the the material desire to accumulate really with money I don't have right now. I don't have the money to go out to like, a card store and drop $800 on a box of cards. I just don't have the resources to do that right now. It would be an irresponsible utilization of my very limited resources. So I wanted to understand that impulse. So this Pisces 1 helps us to go back and say, in our own psychology, what is it about us that we're trying to achieve? We're leaving behind something in search of meaning. Now, once we get to Pisces 2, where the sun starts out in March, we are starting to understand our past. We're starting to understand what we're leaving behind. We are now saying, how do I start creating the solar punk, new world of our dreams, as Devin would say, right? The solar punk community that we want to create. And to do that, we need to have a vision. Pisces 2 is great for having visionary qualities where we are learning how to put our mind towards what we want to bring into our life. Now, the opposite can be true. We can put our minds towards what we don't want, and we'll still create it one way or the other. But this decan shows us the ability to create satisfaction through having a dream, but then releasing attachment to how that dream is going to manifest. I think it is the first step towards manifestation, is holding on to your vision. The downside of this decan is that we have so much faith in our vision and in our dream that we try to fly before we're ready, or we try to force manifestation. Okay, I think that's an important thing to consider. All sorts of stories in this decan about sorcerer's apprentices that try to fly before they're ready. Dolus being one, an apprentice to Prometheus. Phaethon, another one, trying to drive the chariot of his father Helios, the sun, across the sky and failing to do so. So when the sun's in Pisces 2, in the second decan of Pisces, okay, take the experiences that you are experiencing right now as I'm recording this, when the sun's in the first 10-degree section of Pisces, as you question the belief systems that have shaped your reality, as you try to unravel the things that are operating behind the scenes in your mind, okay, in your intuition, in your personal mythology. And then take it into March and say, now I've had this realization about the systems that are operating behind the scenes in my brain. How do I now take that knowledge and start creating a new story, a new belief system, okay, a new vision? And this is how we get from point A to point B. We ask ourselves, is the previous belief system creating a palace for us, or is it creating a prison? Right? This is what they talk about in the Decanic language, is sometimes our beliefs are keeping us in situations that make us unhappy. Sometimes our belief systems are keeping us in situations that are illusions that externalize the costs of our safety, of our peace, of our comfort. Now, I've told you on this channel about some conversations I've been having with my beautiful father. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday, Dad. He's a Pisces 1 sun. And a lot of the things that I've visualized with him, a lot of his attachment to comfort comes through a personal mythology that he's built over his entire life that he sometimes has to re-examine every now and then. I've watched him do it. I've watched him kind of become aware of things that were operating subconsciously through really, not really through any fault of his own, just through the accumulation of his experiences, through the things he was taught, through the things that he had to do to make a life, to provide for his family. And then he has a son like me who says everything that you believe is illusion. Like not everything. What my dad does really believe in is he's a kind person who I think believes in science and believes in uh, nature, and he believes in this earth, uh, and he believes in trying to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that was the kind of the main spiritual guidance that I got from him as a young person. And those are all really amazing things. He was also born into a generation that believed that if you kind of did things a certain way and followed the rules, that you'd just be able to keep your head down and not get in trouble. And for maybe many years, being a straight white male, that was probably true, right? In this society. But even that's not going to protect you for very much longer, friends. So, and it shouldn't. Like that's externalizing the cost. That's externalizing your safety and security to some other group of people that can be oppressed. And we don't have to do that anymore. This is what we're unraveling, okay? So once you've unraveled whatever story it is that is shaping your reality in the second decan of Pisces, you can start to put your energy towards the reality that you want to create. So with that being said, let's move forward to the unfolding of this during this period of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. See if I can make this happen here. Allow this over here. There we go. So we've got our screen here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at Mercury in benefic enclosure. For those of you who want to see it bigger, there you go. All right. I will concede this for today. So what we're going to do is we are going to, what we need to do first is we need to get our writing tool so that I can mark on the screen to show you what I am trying to point out. So give me a minute here. There we go. So benefic enclosure of Mercury. What does that mean? So here's Mercury. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you Jupiter. Whoops. Let's try that again. I'm going to show you Jupiter casting its ray on one side, right? While Venus is casting its ray on the other side. Not really casting its ray. This one's a really interesting combination of Venus being co-present and Jupiter casting its ray. But the different, relationships with Mercury is that Jupiter is casting this 15-degree ray on one side. Okay, the sun hasn't quite gotten to 15 degrees yet to break it up. So here we've got this Jupiter-Venus kind of warm hug for Mercury. Okay, so even though we have Mercury in its retrograde phase, in its exile, in its fall, which, to be honest, friends, there are some Vedic techniques out there that talk about the potential for a reversal of some of the negative things of a debilitated planet when it's retrograde, especially if it's in its fall. So test that out, experiment with that. I'm not going to make the definitive statement on that because I don't know enough about Vedic astrology to speak with authority. But there is some stuff in Freedom Cole's Science of Light Volume 1 that speaks towards this. But even though we may be having some challenges with this Mercury retrograde, these two planets are kind of helping to cradle that energy. So Mercury is retrograding in the third decan of Pisces, where we're trying to ask questions about what sacrifices we may need to make to bring our new dream, our new vision into reality. Jupiter is getting ready to station direct. It's asking us questions on how do we protect and nurture this idea to full fruition. And then Venus is helping to dissolve the boundaries between us that give us an emotional ability to make sacrifices, an emotional ability to say, you know what? I am going to release some of my own personal self-interest in service of the collective. This is something that I've been feeling really passionate about lately. This is something that I've been getting upset about with a lot of people, but also trying to examine where I've been doing it myself too. Because oftentimes we get upset with other people about things that we're, visualize, that we secretly are mad at ourselves about. But where are we unwilling to make sacrifices for our own comfort, right, in service of the collective? We're going to have to start asking those questions. We're going to have to start recognizing that to create a new, sustainable, beautiful, more just world, we're going to have to move through the discomfort of doing something that doesn't have an immediate visible benefit for ourselves as individuals. Delayed gratification, whatever you want it to be. This is part of the fundamental part of a gift economy, is what you have to give may not be immediately reciprocated. Here's an example of this. I spend 3+ hours with all of you each week. I don't immediately get like $1 million for it, right? Sometimes I get some cool clients. Sometimes I get some cool friends. But sometimes that comes down the line. Like it is in a gift economy, you don't dictate what you get immediately. You don't dictate that you have to have a one-for-one exchange. So as we create a society that is more based on these themes and ideas, we may have to say, you know what? To be able to create a better world to pass on as a legacy to my children, grandchildren, community members, etc., I may have to stop doing this particular, I may have to stop giving Jeff Bezos millions of dollars because it's convenient to order something from Amazon. This is one small example, right? I may have to work slightly harder to order something that comes to my house, to do it in an ethical way. I may have to give up the convenience of that. Or, for example, what we were talking about earlier today, to not poison millions of people. Farmers might have to say, you know what, I need to wait 3 or 4 more days for the wheat to dry so that I don't have to spray this like neurotoxin on these things that people eat. Do you see what I'm saying? These are the things that we have to ask ourselves to be able to create that more beautiful world that we know is possible. And I think that this benefic enclosure of Mercury retrograde is going to help us to think about those things in those terms. What sacrifices do we need to make? And it's going to encourage and show us the benefit of doing so. Okay? Because what we learn is that we're not separate from one another. What we really truly learn when we go down a spiritual path is that we are so connected. Even when we go down a scientific, tangible path, it's not just the disconnected spiritual path, right? This is another myth that we need to start talking differently about. Nature, spirit, all of it is ensouled. When you start to look around you at the world that you share with other creatures and beings and humans and plants and animals and rocks and trees, you see that your actions have an effect on other living and non-living things. You see that there is this beautiful web of reciprocity, interaction, and relationship. And what you do to others does come boomerang back onto you. This is where that golden rule comes into effect. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you treat people terribly your entire life, when you need help, they're not going to be there to help you. If you have a kindness that you perpetuate for your entire life, when your need comes, people are going to be much more apt to show up for you because you've built up goodwill with them over time without expectation of return necessarily. But it is a natural consequence of being a good, kind person. This is something that we really don't, I think, make connections with often enough. So, benefic enclosure of Mercury, helping us to understand the benefits of doing something for the collective good rather than just doing something for our own self-interest. Devin says, that's the beauty of the gift economy at Burning Man. When you're there, you feel free to give because you know you'll receive, right? Because that is an agreement that you make when you go there. That is the culture of that organization, of that festival. It is incentivized, right? Because there is an agreement that that's how we're going to do things. how do we start incentivizing, society at large to do similar things? How do we disincentivize like toxic competition, toxic consumption? Like, how do we disincentivize that? These are the questions that I want our community here to put our beautiful minds towards. People who've been to Burning Man, you probably have a lot of ideas around that. I have some reservations about Burning Man. There's some things about it that rub me the wrong way. Mostly that seems like a playground for rich people. And the environmental impact on the playa gives me some pause. And I'm not also a huge fan of just like, I don't know, rampant drugs and sex, which also seem to be things there as well. But I've never been there. And I'm sure that people who have been there can give me a better story about what happens there. I'm making a lot of assumptions about just some observations without having actual experience. So I will back off of that for a minute. But the gift economy part of it seems like a really beautiful part of it. Every idealistic thing has its drawbacks. Every idealistic thing has its benefits and its challenges. This is why we have to ground these things in our lived experience. So I apologize if I made any assumptions about it, but I digress. Rose says, I'm learning we give for the joy of giving and we receive when it is time for us to receive. There you go. I mean, that requires faith, doesn't it? That requires hope. That requires an understanding of cycles and of ecosystems of giving and receiving. It requires a global perspective. It requires a little bit of an objective perspective where we can see that our actions are going to affect other people, right? And that's what we try to do with astrology here too, is we try to understand those relationships with one another. Now on the 2nd of March, Mars moves into Pisces. Okay, so this is a shift, right? Let's go through it here. Go through our shift with Mars and Pisces, moving out of Aquarius 3, moving out of the square with Uranus. And for those of you who missed the last couple episodes, we do have a pretty intense opposition between Donald Trump's Mars and squaring the Uranus in the sky in his angular houses. So we'll probably start to see some of the fallout from that as early as next week happening. So I guess keep your eyes on that and see what comes of that. But once we are able to sever and separate from the frustrating circumstance in our own lives or in the collective, then we put a lot of our energy towards questioning the beliefs that created it. And I think that's what Mars and Pisces is going to do. It's going to say, you know what, let's start to ferret out and remove some of the old stories and narratives that are creating the circumstances that we're fed up with. It also just very tangibly, a lot of Mars's violence, aggression could be played out in the oceans. So this could be also, if you're trying to think just globally, tangibly, more kind of conflicts at sea, right? This also brings us to the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo too. Here we have, let's go to this experience here. So here's the lunar eclipse. Full moon, right? Full moon at 12 degrees of Virgo, conjoining the South Node. So a K2 eclipse. South Node being a place of processing, of releasing. It's the severed body of a dragon or a demon that had consumed an elixir of immortality. And now we have to process some of the old feelings, thoughts, experiences. The moon being here is, I think, encouraging us to release the how, to release processes that don't work anymore, to release forms that don't work. Remember when I talked about the intention setting ability of the Pisces 2 sun, where we have to get clear about our why, we have to visualize what we want to create. But this eclipse says, Visualize what you want to create, but you are not allowed necessarily to dictate the terms of how it's going to happen. You have to maybe change the way you've always done something to bring your new vision into manifestation. So this could be a powerful eclipse for changing the way that we bring the dreams into reality. And sometimes we have to be shown that by the universe, right? Let's see. Yeah, Devin says the U.S. is sending Navy ships into the Indian Ocean. Well, there you go. A manifestation of that when Mars moves into Pisces could be, oceanic conflict. Sucks because there's all sorts of, life all around there, in those oceans that's just trying to survive, and, shooting off like missiles and bullshit. It's just so pointless to me. It's just so dumb. And anyway, so keep your eyes peeled with this eclipse in Virgo, where you might be releasing the way that you do something so that you can create a more in alignment version of your dream. Okay, be patient with the process too, because this is really going to unfold over many months, not just over a few weeks or whatnot. This eclipse is going to be hosted by Mercury, right? The moon is hosted by Mercury retrograde. So again, reviewing the way that you've been doing things and the sacrifices that you've been making to do them that way could lead to a realization that says, you know what, I've been making all these sacrifices, but I'm not getting the reciprocal return that I had expected. Now, we've been talking about gift economics, where we need to sometimes delay gratification, but there are sometimes times where we have to say, we've been putting our energy into this and it's just not working, right? Like this method isn't working. And it's okay to do that sometimes. Sometimes we do have to analyze that and say, you know what? It's not giving me the feeling or the sense of meaning that I thought it would. I have to move things around a little bit. Devin says this eclipse is also happening in the constellation of the Lion. So I think it might be Trump as well. Interesting. Yeah, because of precession, right? We have a lot of the stars in the fixed stars associated with the constellation of Leo are actually measured in the tropical zodiac by Virgo placements, right? So like, for example, Denebola is at 21 degrees of Virgo in the constellation of the Lion. What is the fixed star that's close to 11 degrees Virgo? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I can't. Nope, I'm not going to be able to pull it up that quickly. There's another fixed star that's around that period that is, maybe has some significations for this eclipse. Now that's going to bother me. What's the fixed star at 11 degrees Virgo? Somebody put it in the chat here. But maybe themes around how we use power, right? Themes around how we administrate, how we show courage can also come through, I think, the Virgo stars now too. Regulus, another star in the constellation of Leo, is Zosma. Thank you, Devin. Zosma. Zosma. Zosma has some significations around sacrifice, around martyrdom. So there may be like a theme of martyrdom that comes through this eclipse potentially, with the moon being pretty close to that fixed star, from what I remember. But Regulus also is part of the first degrees of Virgo as well. So this is sort of a long-winded way of saying, of acknowledging Devin's contribution here, where he's saying that a lot of these fixed stars are going to be bringing in themes of the constellation of the Lion, Leo, as well. Okay, so let's move forward. Let's keep going. Man, we really go a long time here, don't we? That's okay. I've got my little bone broth here. Power me up. A little protein. Right after this eclipse, we are going to see, and I will break down the eclipse in full coming up in maybe a week or so, week or two. I'll break it down in great detail for you. Rose is saying, would this hit you if your Venus is at 13 degrees in Virgo? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. When you're looking at a lunar aspect, I would say the lunar aspect can have a much wider orb than a normal planet. Um, Now different astrologers are gonna like have different orbs with that, but at least a 10 to 12 degree orb for the moon. So if you have a planet around anywhere from either side of 10 to 12 degrees of either side of 12 degrees Virgo, you're probably going to be feeling this eclipse pretty intensely. Okay, so let's talk about this Sun trining Jupiter retrograde, the end of the benefic enclosure of Mercury on the 5th. Okay, so here we go. Here it is. We've got the Sun trine, okay, right here at about 15 degrees of Pisces and 15 degrees of Cancer, respectively. Now, the reason it's the end of the mercurial benefic enclosure is because once the Sun hits 15 degrees, okay, once it's on the other side of the ray that Jupiter is casting, it starts breaking it up, okay? So this is an important concept in Hellenistic astrology when you're looking at enclosures of planets. Another planet can like intercede, right? That can be a good thing too. Planets often break up potential malefic enclosures all the time. That's why that they're a little bit more rare, because these planets can often, be helping out. It would normally be a planet that has its back against the wall, but a planet will be helping. In this case, the Sun is starting to break up that benefic enclosure. Now, Sun trining Jupiter, your vision may be starting to come together. You may be really starting to understand ways that you can protect and grow your vision moving forward. I've been working on like new class ideas, and a lot of those things are percolating behind the scenes. I've been kind of talking about it a little bit recently. I have one that's brewing about, the astrology of the history of economics. If people would like to get involved in starting to brainstorm together through the language of astrology, learning the history of how we got here in the monetary system and how to create a new just monetary system moving forward, which in my opinion is the root of all of this evil that we've been seeing. Not that money is the root of evil, but the way that we exchange it and what we incentivize has led to a lot of that evil in the world. And to me, that's the core issue of creating a more fair and just society. It will have so many ripple and ramification effects. So that's an example of something that's brewing behind the scenes that maybe we'll figure out ways to bring it into form around this period of time, right? You may have something in your life like that, where something's been percolating behind the scenes, and you might have some really good ideas about how to bring it to maturity around the Sun-Jupiter trine. Now, the day after, Venus moves into Aries. Okay, so here's Venus moving into Aries on March the 6th. It immediately starts to make a conjunction with Neptune and Saturn. Okay, so it maybe is potentially smoothing over some of the challenges that we're having with Saturn in Aries. It could also be putting pressure on Venus. Like, I think it kind of goes both ways. Saturn brings some limitations to Venus. Venus may be harmonizing a little bit some of the limitations. They're trying to figure it out. They're having a discussion with one another. But this is the beginning, really, of the benefic enclosure of Saturn. Now let's take a look at that, because I find these enclosures really fascinating. So look at Venus now in the sign of Aries, and we see Venus applying by conjunction, I guess, or by applying aspect in the same sign, and then Jupiter is making its 15-degree square ray on one side of Saturn. There's not any other planet that's really breaking that up. All of these other planets are still kind of in this stellium in Pisces, in aversion to that, okay? Earlier, I was saying that there was a question I had about whether Venus was still in that benefic enclosure of Saturn earlier. One could make the argument that Venus is enclosing Saturn after it makes its conjunction with Mercury on February the 28th. So if we could consider that benefic enclosure crossing sign boundaries, it starts on the 28th. Now, I'm not sure about that. So that's why I'm saying I know for sure it's going to be in a benefic enclosure, okay, once it moves into Aries. So your mileage may vary from that. We may get an extra week of Saturn in benefic enclosure. Let's test it in theory. Okay, let's test it in experience so we can support the theory. But I do think that this is going to help smooth out some of the, I don't know, attachment or binding to violence, the attraction to the domineering spirit and the authoritarian spirit. Maybe we get a little break from that for a few, maybe hopefully more than just 2 days. But I do think that that could smooth that out with those two planets kind of enclosing Saturn. Now, the other possibility with this that I think is important to acknowledge is we do have leaders, in particular, the President of the United States, that has a benefic enclosure of a debilitated Saturn. So he has Venus and Jupiter making this benefic enclosure of his Saturn in Cancer, and Saturn in its exile. It can be problematic for the collective. It can be very beneficial for the individual. He has famously said, I can walk down Fifth Avenue and murder someone in the street and get away with it. And that seems to be that he is protected from the ramifications of his lowest impulses, which maybe Saturn in Cancer could represent in his chart in the 12th house. That could be a problem. This could also be people getting away with horrific authoritarian things because of the protection of Venus and Jupiter. So keep an eye on that. It could be feeling like we're protected from our own worst impulses, but it could also be people doing the worst impulses being protected from consequences, which, at least in America right now, that seems to be the MO. You know, it's frustrating. So keep an eye on that. It's going to end on the 8th, and it ends on the 8th. I'll show you how it ends here. So like we go forward a couple days, and once Venus makes the conjunction with Saturn, it's on the other side, and both of those planets aren't enclosing Saturn anymore. Okay, March 7th is a really important inflection point and day in this month. So I'm just going to go kind of, I wanted to go to like the middle of the day, so you can kind of see this. Here's around noonish. Okay. On the 7th, Mercury Cazimis. So here's Mercury coming together at 16 degrees in the heart of the sun. Okay. Also, we also see Saturn going under the beams of the sun at 2 degrees of Aries. We also have Venus conjoining Neptune at about 1 degree of Aries on that day. So 3 really important messages in the sky that day. Let's start with Mercury Cazimi, break it down. Mercury Cazimi is when a planet, Mercury in particular, is going to be renewing itself in the heart of the sun. So let me just highlight that in blue here, okay? It's a seminal moment, a seed moment. And it is happening when Mercury is in a place that it is not necessarily well resourced. Okay, in Jupiter's sign, generally it would be very debilitated, retrograde, Pisces, exile, fallen. Now, I will say this. 2 things give me hope for this Mercury Cazimi. First of all, the concept that we were talking about in Vedic astrology about a fallen planet retrograde could act like its opposite, potential to act exalted. I'm pulling this directly from Freedom Cole's book, okay? Go look it up. The other thing that gives me some hope about this Mercury Cazimi is that while Mercury itself is not super happy in the domain of Pisces, Jupiter is actually very happy in the domain of Cancer. So Jupiter is providing high quality resources to Mercury, even if it's not the type of resources that Mercury generally would feel comfortable using. But I do think that there's something to that. I do think that this is a time where we're asking the right questions about what our dream is. And Jupiter says, I will help you protect that dream if you do this, this, and this. Now, you don't get to dictate all the terms of it, but I'm going to give you some really good emotional, intuitive ideas as to directions that I could guide you towards if you follow my lead. So I think with this Mercury cazimi, it's saying follow the lead of Jupiter. Follow your instincts around it. Don't get too hung up on the tangible methodology around it. If the universe, aka Jupiter or Zeus, is giving you little breadcrumbs intuitively, start following them. Start trusting that even if it doesn't look like exactly where you thought you were going, it could be leading you in a good direction. Okay. All right. Lauren is here. What's up, Lauren? Painted Turtle says, hey, Spencer, how's it going? It's going okay, Lauren. You're coming in the middle of our March broadcast. We've been talking a lot about our stories, and we've been talking a lot about movies from the 90s with beautiful Western landscapes. We got emotional about Dances with Wolves earlier in the show. We've been speaking truth to power around, I don't know, some of the challenges that have been going on in the collective. We've been trying to visualize a new economic system and a new, more fair and just way of organizing our society. You know, just the run-of-the-mill thing here, but hope that you're doing well, friend. Okay, so let's go to the next part. Saturn under the beams of the sun, right? Saturn under the beams. So this one we talked about earlier in the broadcast. This is one of our, I think, our peak moments of the month. Here is the 15-degree arc of separation between Saturn and the sun. Different astrologers have different arcs of separation based on their own visualizations. There are some astrologers that use different orbs. I like to standardize it to 15 degrees, like Demetra George does in her Astrology and in Theory and Practice series books. So if we assume that that is what we're working with, we are seeing Saturn going under the beams and coming closer to a conjunction with Sun. Okay, USB is under the Sun's beams. Okay, right, under the Sun's beams. Okay. So when Saturn moves under the beams of the sun, traditional astrologers would say that the planet is taking to its sickbed. It is entering into the furnace of the sun to have all of the old cycle, the old body, all of the old manifestations burned away. Okay? It is self-immolating in the heart of the sun. Now, everything that we've collected over Saturn's last year starts to get burned away. Now, that doesn't mean every single thing is changing, but it does mean that we're ending one cycle, the beginning of the end of a cycle, and we're starting to get seeded for the next Saturn cycle. So again, often what you'll see when Saturn goes under the beams of the sun is a lack of structure or a dismantling of old structures. Sometimes Saturn and the beams can feel really chaotic. One example is Saturn was moving under the beams during the January 6th events in the first 2021, right? Where it seemed very chaotic, like law and order had started to just disintegrate. When Saturn conjoined the sun, there was measures that were taken to certify the election, right? When Saturn emerged from under the beams, I believe there were articles of impeachment filed for people who had supported this dissolving of law and order. Okay, so there's cycles that happen with it. Now, when we go through the Saturn cycle here, just remember you've got these dates, all right? You have the under the beams of the sun at the 25th, okay? I'm sorry, excuse me, at the 7th, The cazimi happens on the 25th of March, and then Saturn's going to emerge as the morning starts, 6 degrees of Aries on the 11th of April. So you have to see those as chapters of the same story. This is super important when we're looking at solar phases. You have to look at when the planet goes under the beams, when it is cazimi, and then when it emerges again. All of those things are going to give you context for the cycle that is to come. Now, what do I think is going to happen with this? Well, I mean, I'm a little bit nervous. There's two ways I've been kind of interpreting Saturn and Aries. Two ways, okay? First of all, Saturn is a planet of consequences. It is also a planet of concretization, of turning something into something real, of eliminating options and possibilities to make one of those possibilities real. So two ways I could see this playing out. First of all, Saturn is bringing accountability to excessive yang energy. Saturn is saying this toxic masculinity, this toxic patriarchy energy is going to have a reckoning. And this could be one very poignant moment towards that. The other possibility is that Saturn says, well, I'm going to utilize the energy of the first decan of Aries, which is related to domination and colonization, dominion, and I'm going to utilize authoritarian power and make that real. So I think that there's both possibilities. Like, it could be a check on patriarchal power of toxic masculinity and the beginning of a reckoning around that. But it could also be a concretization of the use of violence and force and authoritarianism. When Saturn conjoins the sun, like, it's infused with that new reality. Now, there's a lot of saber rattling that's happening in the collective right now. You know, Aries is a planet, or Aries is a sign that is associated with conflict, with war, with anger, with collateral damage. So we could also be seeing these conflicts playing out that have unintended consequences. This first decan in Austin Kopic's book is called The Axe. Think about the axe as a weapon of war, just swinging it around, and just like, you know, you could be cutting off someone's head, but like cutting off 4 other heads around you, you know, that you didn't intend to damage. So I guess be careful about creating your own circumstance of collateral damage. People are justifiably angry right now. And I think that, again, how do we direct that anger into meaningful change rather than just creating collateral damage through an out of control acts of anger? These are questions that you should start asking yourself when Saturn moves under the beams and then conjoins the sun and then emerges from the beams. It's how do you become part of the solution? How do you use that anger and fuel actual change? Because, again, every decan, every sign, every planet has a role and a purpose. The role of the first decan of Aries, in my opinion, is for, in nature, for the seeds to burst through the soil. You know, it takes a lot of energy to bust out of the husk of the seed and to reach the light. I will remind you that that is not the end of the process. If we live in habitual yang, fight or flight, bursting through the soil energy, we will burn out. Eventually, we have to spread out in relationship. Eventually, we have to take that yang energy, the energy to start something new, and we have to start building relationships with it. Maybe there's something where you say, I'm fed up with the way that this world is playing out. And I want to start a new locally based communal effort. Maybe you say, I'm tired of people tearing down trees in my neighborhood. I want to start planting new trees, and I need a bunch of people to gather together and help me plant trees. I'm saying that because we literally have a group of like amazing sort of anarchists in our neighborhood that just like out of the blue one year we're like, we're just going to start planting a bunch of trees and guerrilla tree planting, and we're going to give away native fruit trees at the park every year. And we got a bunch of pawpaw trees last year, and we got some white pines, and we got all these trees that we planted in our backyard, which was amazing. And at some point, somebody had to say, I need to start this. I need to just stop thinking about it and take the first step. And then it grew out into a relationship. You see? So you might have to say, I'm just so tired of this. I need to take the first step. And then that will lead to more reciprocity, more interaction, more relationship. Okay? So think about how you can take that first step, but maybe that first step is not necessarily in service of just some individuated, selfish desire. Maybe that first step is just initiating a communal effort because you're fed up with the way that it is. You're fed up with the story of separation. You're fed up with your own isolation, and you're fed up with the way that you're treated or anyone else is treated, so that you start something that will actually be a positive thing moving forward for everyone. Rose says, you reminded me of literally burning your created art so you can own the creativity of the process you underwent. It's a process, not a destination. Yeah, we're all in process here. And again, the beautiful thing about this chart on the screen, it's a circle, it's a cycle. It's whole. Do you see what I mean? It's a piece of a whole. Think of that zodiac as the whole experience we're going through. And if you start only looking at it, if I was on this chart, Rose, this is a good point. If on this chart, I only showed you, let me see if I can do this here. I'm going to try to draw something. If I only said, this is all you get visible right here, all this doesn't even exist. That's all you get. Don't even look at this rest of this. You just have this piece of pie. Here's the piece of sky pie. That's all. It tells a very different story than if you see it in relationship to all of these other planets, in relationship to where these planets are going to be eventually, and the conversations that they're having with each other. This sky pie piece is not how we experience our reality. We experience our reality like this. Okay? Like that. It's all connected. Okay? It's all happening all at once. And we have to contextualize this very nuanced story rather than this just slightly small piece of it. So think about that when you're taking your actions too. How do you contextualize it within the bigger picture? Lauren says, one thing affirmed in Vedic I've read about retrograde planets is that by the human eye, they appear brighter, and that to the Vedic astrologers that conveys added strength that it otherwise does not possess. I think you're right. I think the way I've experienced that in my very limited study into Vedic astrology is it increases desire. Right? A retrograde planet increases the desire of that planet in the area that it's moving through. So maybe it burning brighter is increasing the influence that it has on us on some level too. I like to think of the planets as trying to carry out their own agendas through us. And we can choose to like carry out their agenda, or we can choose to make some of our own choices. We have to carry out some of their agendas, but we don't have to do everything that they say, I think, all the time. Devin says they're brighter because they're closer. Well, there you go. It's science. It's science. And maybe their influence is stronger because they're closer as well. So this is why we have a community-created astrology. I love it. Okay, so let's move forward. The last thing that's happening on that day is Venus is conjoining Neptune. All right, so here's Venus-Neptune conjoining about 1 degree of Aries. And again, we have this influence of Saturn and Neptune together. We have this desire to create structure, but Neptune's desire to dissolve it. So there are these two forces that are happening. Now Neptune is also dissolving some of the Venusian energy. Neptune also is trying to lead us towards redemption and salvation, according to Liz Green in her Neptune book. Sometimes it is a place where we want to dissolve into collective emotion, feeling, impulse. It can be a place where we're getting swept up in the collective zeitgeist. And with Venus here too, maybe there is something associated that is Venusian in quality that is getting us swept up in the zeitgeist. When I look at this arrangement, to me, this, as Venus is often represented yin or sacred feminine, but also Venus is a warrior as well in certain phases, in certain, guises. I think this is like a very idealistic warrior Venus that is trying to stand up for, yin, for women, for the sacred feminine, but willing to fight to do so. I think that this is what this represents to me. Kind of a warrior Venus, willing to stand up for the sacred feminine. Okay, let's keep going. Lauren says, I am assessing planets in exaltation. Lehman says, things are done for them. They are not captains of their own fate like planet in rulership. Another thing that is originally the exaltation of a planet happened at a certain degree, not within the whole of the sign. And I'm trying to see what we feel in exaltation is actually the build up to that degree rather than it being 30 full degrees. I'm just trying to process that. That things are done for them. I'm thinking about this just from my own personal experience since having the moon in exaltation. I'd have to think about that. I don't have an opinion on that statement yet, but I think it's worth continuing to pursue that course of study. Lee Lehman's amazing. Great book on rulerships and a great horary astrologer as well. So let me know what you find. Okay. Now, on the 8th, Venus is going to conjoin Saturn, right? Which is the end of the benefic enclosure of Saturn. I think that something is coming that is helping to smooth over some of the more negative challenges of Saturn and Aries. And this conjunction shows us the result of that. And then Saturn is released from that benefic enclosure. This is also a day in North America, I guess in the United States. I don't know if Canada is included in this, but this is where we spring forward. So don't forget to set your clocks forward on the 8th at 2 a.m. Eastern time. I don't know, the standard daylight, it's a different time. I don't know which. Okay, let's keep going. We're gonna have to go a little bit quicker here because I'm getting hungry. And when I get hungry, I get tired and less articulate. So on the 9th, we have the Venus. We have Venus emerging as a morning star. Remember when I said at the beginning of the broadcast, everything emerges? Well, this is I believe, our second planet that is, this is our, let's see, first or second planet. I think this is our first emerging. Yeah, this is the first planet that emerges, Venus. 4 degrees of Aries. So all of those idealistic crusades, the concretization of something, of fighting for rights, fighting for sacred feminine, now Venus is emerging and we're seeing the result of it. The emerging of a star or a planet is called a moment of phasis, an omen that speaks. So we see a tangible representation of this moving forward, right? So this is, I think, really important moving forward here. KWOW says, bye for now. Take care, everyone. Catch you next week, Spencer. Thank you, KWOW, for hanging out. Appreciate you. Appreciate you hanging out. Javier says, we do an International Women's Day. Is that around this time? When is International Women's Day? Is that something that's happening around this date? Somebody look that up and put it in the chat, because there you go. We will see something that is a very powerful, idealistic, a very powerful standing up for women's rights, if that's around that period of time. The 8th, perfect, right? So around the time that Venus is conjoining Saturn and Neptune, and Venus is emerging from the beams, we have International Women's Day. Now, I'm going to say that a lot of, let's say that Saturn in Aries represents the concretization of patriarchal toxic masculinity. Well, now Venus is in the room with that toxic masculine force and says, well, hey, how about you take into consideration our perspective, right? So there is a conversation happening there that I think International Women's Day in this environment, I think it's going to be really powerful. I think that there's been a lot of abuses that have been exposed that have been very, very toxic towards women. And I think that women are justifiably angry right now. And I think that that anger is going to be on display in International Women's Day. And I think it'll be a unifying anger that hopefully will lead to action that will help to rebalance and reharmonize that toxic energy. This is what Venus's energy often does. It reharmonizes and balances things that are out of alignment. So I think it could be a really powerful display of solidarity, but also utilizing people's ability to say in the first decan of Aries, this is not me. I reject this. So I think that that's going to be a powerful rejection of toxic masculinity, of patriarchy, and a consolidation of sacred feminine energy. Javier says, and Black Moon Lilith is in Sagittarius. There you go. There you go. Lots of fiery energy around that period of time. So Venus emerging as the morning star, powerful, powerful visualization of sacred feminine energy. On the 9th, okay, we have Mercury making a trine to Jupiter, both of them in their retrograde phases. Now, this is, I believe, the first of 2 Mercury trines with Jupiter. This is one where we have it direct, a retrograde, and then we'll have another one with it direct, okay? So keep that in mind as we move forward. Something that you experience here, you might experience again a week or so later, a couple weeks later. We'll have to see where that is in the, where is that? Just trust me. It happens again. Like, this is how a Pisces detailed astrological analysis goes. It says, here's all these details, but just trust me on some of them, right? Oh boy, these are tough waters for Virgo heavy placements. We don't always get to be as exacting as we would like, but yeah. Rose says, come on, Jane Fonda energy again. There you go. Jane Fonda, I love it. Evening star Venus. Did I say morning star again? Damn it. Damn it, Spencer. See? This is why we do this together. I'm going to go back. Poop. There you go. See, I changed it. This is the Mandala effect. I never said morning star. It's always been evening star. I'm just kidding. So for those of you who are wondering, I think I had evening star somewhere in my notes, but I think I just wrote it wrong on here. So good catch. The concept that Devin is helping me to get correct is when the planet emerges from the beams, it's either emerging after the sun or before. Okay. In this case, Venus is rising in the morning after the sun, and it will be visible in the evening. Okay. So it's visible in the evening as the evening star. So when the sun sets, Venus becomes visible again. Okay. So there's a different quality to Venus as an evening and as a morning star. As the morning star, she's more of a warrior. In the evening star, she's more of a harmonizer, from what I understand. Now, this has a little bit of nuance to it because Venus is emerging as more of the like traditional harmonizing force, but in Aries. So there is this kind of like weird kind of paradox. She's like trying to harmonize, but she's utilizing the qualities of Aries to harmonize. So Devin, Thank you for that. This is why we have an awesome community here. You can catch my little errors here and there. Uh, if I want to show you something, friends, this is a lot of information to keep straight. I'm going to just go to, I'm just going to show you something real quick here. See this? These are my notes that I do every single month. That's page 1. Here's page 2. Here's page 3. Okay, this is 3 pages like this that look like this every single month. I do them by hand every month. I do this for people's charts too. I write out things like this every month. And it is like a symphonic, an attempt to do a symphonic orchestra with all of the different instruments playing all at once as one humble individual trying to keep all of these details straight in my brain and talk about them for 3.5 hours on the live stream. So sometimes I am going to make an error. And I think that this is why I am so grateful for all of you. If I mess something up and I get the detail wrong, we can be humble enough here to admit it and be like, you're right. let's get this right. So this is where the part of the advantage of doing this as a community too, because if I had pre-recorded that and that error remained, I would have just gone off on a tangent about Venus as the morning star and given false information. But since we have people kind of like doing editing in real time, we catch it. I love it. And Devin says, you're doing a great job though. Thank you, friend. But yeah, no, it's good. Like, I think oftentimes we just have to be humble enough to say, hey, you know what? We need to put our brains together on this. We are a team here and we're all figuring it out one day at a time. I will say the hardest part of this broadcast, or the preparation for this broadcast that takes me the most amount of time, is looking for both the benefic and malefic enclosures and calculating when the planets are emerging from the beams. I wish that Astro Gold would do both of these things. If you're listening, anyone out there who does Astro Gold stuff, please add that as a feature. Please add moments of phasis where planets are emerging and benefic and malefic enclosures to your program. You would save me hours of time every week, and it would make it much more accurate. Not to say that that would have caught this error, but it would probably catch a lot of other ones. Rose says, I was going to say ephemeris notes. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing each week. I love writing it by hand, though. But when I write these notes, oftentimes it is so I am committing these things to memory and intuition. It is actually somewhat rare that I'm going to be looking at the notes the whole time. I will glance at them from time to time, but mostly what I'm doing is I'm practicing the performance. I'm practicing the song. I'm practicing my guitar or whatever it is. And then once we get to this kind of point, it comes out. And then I make all the banners, and that helps me on the way too. Sometimes the translation from the notes to banners gets a little bit lost, because I will point out that in my notes, I had Venus emerging as the evening star in my notes, but the translation got lost from the banners. But I digress. That's a long-winded way of saying thank you, Devin. You rock. Okay. Let's see. Lauren says, one thing to watch for with Venus and Aries is I've definitely seen fiery females with a passion to externally act on behalf of women. But the Venusian placement is also Aries and can be acting out of self-interest that does not communicate the interest of the whole, and can sometimes, unconscious to themselves, have internalized misogynistic points of view that do not ultimately serve. I think that's a pretty eloquent description of some of the potential hazards of Venus and Aries, for sure. I think that an example of this, Lauren, that I have kind of recently come across, and it may not be Venus and Aries, but it just feels like an example of that. Someone sent me a Tolkien article written by someone who had some very powerful feminist perspectives, and was talking about the end of the World War I into World War II. Their opinion was many progressive policies were enacted on the planet because a third of the men died. And while I understand like the impulse to say, well, men are putting out the patriarchal ideas, which I agree with, their solution was like, maybe more men need to die. And I was like, well, that's a tough sell. Like maybe we don't need to just like do a man genocide, right? Do a purging of the men of the planet. Maybe we need to share power between men and women, communicate better between the sexes, and second of all, like teach men how to be better men by making them holistic people rather than toxically masculine, teaching them of the sacredness of the feminine, teaching them that yin is just as important to their being, and saying that maybe as spirits we don't have to be so polarized with our gender roles. You know what I'm saying? So this is to me like, you know, an example of how sometimes we can take that idea and we can communicate it in a way that could be like, well, that sounds just as toxic as the thing that it's trying to fix. Do you see what I'm saying? Like you can't give me the argument that, well, the patriarchy is committing genocide, so let's just kill off a large faceless group of people. Like that's the most fucked up argument ever. That's literally using the tools of the oppressor to try to fix the problem. I don't think that that's how we should solve the problem. But yes, I think that was brought to mind when thinking about your statement there. Let's see. Javier says, I'm so mad. I got to white out my calendar now. Javier, come on. Come on now. Don't you get me all Virgo anxious. I know it's a joke, but sometimes I feel like that. Like, Lauren says, themselves or others, well, natives need some gentle help in seeing these blind spots sometimes, as their motivations are often good, but the means to the end can be quick, defensive, and short-sighted. Yeah. Yeah. And my argument for that other kind of statement that happened before is, well, yeah, maybe a third of the men died, but the women weren't holding office in 1940s. Like there were still men in charge of those governments. So that argument doesn't really hold a lot of water to me. Maybe there were more women in the war effort in the factories and out of the home, and that maybe gave a whole different perspective to society. I can understand that argument, and the women's suffragette movement and all of those things. The argument that like, well, a third of the women died, so they were in charge for a little while. It's not even just the reality of it. So I do agree, though, the stories that have shaped how we put energy out into the world and have created toxic masculinity, patriarchy, that is 100% ripe for a rebalancing. Rose says many men died in Vietnam too of that generation. Not sure that caused women to profit. Exactly. I mean, you had like Reagan come right after that, okay, and his economic system that was extremely toxic and patriarchal, and that came from, you know, this is a false equivalency in my opinion. Lauren says, raising a boy and nurturing his sensitivity and heart is so, so important. Gemini is a very masculine sign, and in Vedic, it is the divine masculine and feminine together. I think we will see a real rise in... Lauren's still typing. Yeah, telling new stories. Let's raise our sons better. Let's teach them how to care about this planet and each other, and to share power, right? A real rise in the unity between sexes exhibited in strong, balanced couples when Uranus stays in Gemini for good. Perfect. I agree. How do we speak towards a unification of not only the sexes, but the yin and the yang energies within us. That to me is the more reasonable solution, that is less rooted in the type of violence that has been perpetrated by the patriarchy, you know, calling for a genocide of an entire swath of gender is not solving the problem. Okay. Anyway, some say we are just now ending the cycle of Reagan's era. Maybe his era really had a trickle down effect on our economics. Trickle down of shit, of diarrhea, not of like prosperity. We're still dealing with the flaccid, you know, leaking of his depends into our fucking economic system that has created a larger and larger wealth gap. So yeah, we probably are. Javier says, reminds me of indigenous groups and how you're paired with a wife or husband, that you support each other's growth in healthy masculine and feminine for your lineage. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Many First Nations people have figured this out, that you can't have one without the other, right? You have to have a balance. This is the balance in the sacred balance in nature, the homeostasis in nature. It needs yin and yang energy. SFDS, drip, yes. Yep, 100%. Okay, so Venus emerging as the evening star. Then we get to our Mercury trining Jupiter retrograde on the 9th. And that's the last aspect that happens when the sun is in Pisces 2. So when we get to sun in Pisces 3, the energy shifts a little bit. Let's talk about it. Okay, first, before we do that, do me a huge favor. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, take a stretch break, okay? Stretch your legs. We have been understandably going down a lot of rabbit holes this week because there's so many things happening. Sometimes I apologize for being long-winded and for being a little bit, you know, scattered. I just don't think that we have to keep apologizing for that. You know, we choose to spend this time together. If you're still here, the 8 of you are still watching, you've chosen to be here. You've been putting some beautiful observations and comments into the chat. We are sharing our stories together. Sometimes storytelling takes more time. And to me, these long form videos are a rebellious act against the short form, toxic, attention span stealing internet that we have now. Okay. So this is a form of resistance, in my opinion, because we're learning how to uncover context and contextualize and solidify and ground all of this. And it's not going to be for everyone, but if you're here today and you're still with me, cheers to you, friend. You know, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're enjoying spending time here, if you can afford it, support the channel monetarily as well. My partner and I could use the help. I don't know if this is a thing, but like, for those of you who are professionals out there, have you seen your clients starting to fall off? Maybe it's part of the economic challenge. Maybe it's AI. We try to be real people here and talk about real things. My partner kind of got laid off in December, partially due to AI replacing some of her skill set. And my client roster has really gone down since AI started to get more powerful. And I think people are using AI to do astrology, and it is concerning. So that's a long-winded way of saying, hey, if you can spare a few bucks, put some stuff in the chat if you can. We would really appreciate it, and it would help us sustain and keep doing this work. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. And I know times are tough. This is the thing too. Like, don't give what you don't have. But as the wealth gap starts to widen, you know, everyone, and AI takes over, a lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of things are becoming more enshittified and more expensive. And I try to keep this information available to the most people possible. And I don't want to create paywalls for anyone. So to be able to do that, your donations really, really help. But let's talk Sun and Pisces. Okay. Rose says, many got laid off, so many are hurting. I hear you. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing with the research that I'm doing, because the system just isn't working anymore. It's not working for anyone. AI is accelerating in a crazy fast way, taking people's jobs, putting people out of work. We just aren't sustaining ourselves in the same way anymore. And we have to find a new way to organize the way that we connect people with our gifts, resources, and services that will help people just live, right? Okay, so Sun in Pisces 3. Let's talk about this. We realized in Sun in Pisces 2 that we were trying to put our minds towards what we wanted to create. In Pisces 3, we understand and start to understand the sacrifices that we have been making or need to make the dream real. It's a Mars ruled decan. It is a 10 of Cups syncretized decan. The Book of Thoth calls it Lord of Perfected Success. The Book T calls it the Lord of Satiety. Austin Cobbett calls it a cup of blood in his book, and that is a reference to Mars. Daimon in spirit is Elpis. Elpis translates to hope. Elpis is a story related to the Jar of Pandora, which really, I think, speaks to the wild swings of emotions that we can experience in this, human experience. The heights of ecstasy, the depths of despair, the knowledge of our own impending death. And the hope helps us to keep going through that. So really a lot of the spotlight that the sun brings during this time is really showing us, number one, what sacrifices we might need to make to bring about this idealized, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow type of experience. But also it really highlights the extremes of emotion that we can feel as human beings, for better or for worse. It dissolves the boundaries between us emotionally. So we have Venus at its maximum degree of exaltation around 27, 28 degrees Pisces. So we feel what other people feel. We also can express that artistically. So this is a great time to do some art that expresses the beauty of the collective or the extremes of emotion, right? Rose says, screw AI. I'm with you. Devin says, can't wait to watch the AI documentary. Send me a link. I'm getting real frustrated with the AI stuff. It's super toxic. In the Midwest where I live, there's a new proposed data center everywhere, and it's just, I don't have the energy to go on an AI rant right now. So just know that I'm with you. Those of you who have serious questions about its use and serious reservations about it. Lauren says, oh my God, so many astrology apps. The one that supposedly sends you your perfect song based on your chart. Oh my God. I don't know. I think I can do better someday, I hope. Lauren, I feel like those of us who have invested decades of our knowledge, I will go on a mini rant about this. Will you all forgive me for that? If you're an astrologer and you've done the work to learn how to do this, for the love of all that is holy, stop asking fucking AI to do your astrology work for you. Don't check your work with AI. Don't ask it to do a horary for you. Don't fucking ask it for advice every day and put charts in it. What you are literally doing is training it to replace you. Every chart that you feed into it, every correction that you make is making it easier for that AI app to replace you. And this is true across multiple industries. You are accelerating your own unemployment. And There will be those that argue, well, AI can never replace the human touch and intuition of an astrologer. No, it can't. But that's not going to stop people that would potentially come to you for advice from using it in that manner. Do you see what I'm saying? So, and also, if AI replaces all their jobs, no one's going to be able to afford to hire an astrologer anyway. So it's all bad. Stop using it. Stop funding fascism. ChatGPT, the owner of that company, is one of the biggest contributors to the Trump administration out of all of those tech bros. Stop funding fascism. Stop asking it for fucking recipe ideas. Stop asking it to organize your schedule. Stop training it to replace you. It's that simple. And rant. Lauren was on top of this from the beginning. There was a time when Lauren was in one of my classes, and we were starting to think about using Zoom to utilize that kind of feature on Zoom where it was like an AI assistant that would like contextualize and give you like a transcript. And I was like, that sounds useful. And Lauren was really adamant about not using it in class. And I sort of had like a little like weird pride moment about it. And then I finally started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? Lauren was fucking right. Lauren, you were right. And you were 100% right. And we didn't use it in class, by the way. I said, you know what? You're uncomfortable with it. Let's not do it. And Lauren was so right on. And I just wanted to acknowledge that, is when we look back and we see someone that tried to warn us about something important and they were right, we should give them their flowers. So Lauren, keep on spreading that gospel about how challenging these things can be. And if you have something else that you see coming in down the pike, let me know, friend. Rose says, I'm buying into the feeling of the Obama hope era. Yes, we can. I hope so too. I don't know if Barack Obama was as much of the hero as we painted him to be. Everyone has their flaws and challenges. He kind of bailed out the banks. I'm not going to give him a huge pass because he perpetuated some of this system, but he's certainly not exactly what we see in our leadership today. He had a lot of different ideas in that, but there was definitely hope in that era. So yeah, if that's what we're buying into, exhale. I'll try. Devin says, by releasing hope, we have to recognize that we need to take action ourselves. Absolutely. And you know what, Devin? When we get through the Pisces 3 understanding of sacrifice and understanding that hope is necessary for taking action, we move to Aries after that. We say hope is not enough. Hope is a precursor. It is an essential element that to take place before we take the action. You have to have hope for a better tomorrow to motivate you to take the actions necessary to get out there. But hope itself is not an end. Hope is part of the collective cycle that eventually moves into action in Aries. So we don't need to completely lose hope. We don't need to completely release hope. We need to say hope is one stage of this, and it is an important stage, but we can't get stuck in it. I would highly, one of the biggest realizations I've ever had as an astrologer is understanding that we are the entire zodiacal cycle. We are not one sign. We are not one planet. We are all of it. And if we try to continually identify with one small section and get stuck in that, we can be a Cancer sun. We can be a Taurus sun. We can be an Aries sun. That doesn't mean we have to completely get stuck in that particular stage. You can be a Taurus and you can learn how to change your routine. You can be a Pisces and learn how to have hope, but then take action on that hope. Do you see what I'm saying? So very important that you have to see yourself as part of this cycle. Now, you may have specific gifts for one particular piece of that pie or puzzle, but at the end of the day, you have to play all the roles. You have to go through the entire cycle. You have to continue to grow within that, okay? Again, you may have specific gifts that are concentrations of energy. Like, for example, I've talked about the sun being a place where you may have unlimited ability to create vitality and generosity. In this example, when the sun's moving collectively through Pisces 3, we might have as a group a collective ability to have hope and to talk about what we're hopeful for. And then when the sun collectively moves into Aries, we got to take action on that hope. We can't get stuck in that. If we get stuck in that phase, we're going to have a stillbirth, right? At the new equinox. We don't want to get stuck in the birth canal. But hope is what causes the contractions. You know what I'm saying? And those contractions are important. If we don't have contractions, we don't have the hope of the mother of the baby that is going to be born. If she's like, I don't have any hope for this baby, she's not going to go through the labor pains necessary to birth it. Do you see what I mean? That's where we understand that the anticipation of holding that child in her arms will inspire that mother to go through the often horrific pain. I can only imagine, because I haven't done it, but I have given birth to other things. But I can only imagine the horrific pain of giving birth to a child, but how beautiful it is afterwards, right? And hope helps us to go through that painful experience. Rose says, Obama's given some good interviews lately that explain some of his decisions and challenges he faces. Now it's our turn. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people are complicated. I think that without going too far down a political rabbit hole, Barack Obama did some good things and Barack Obama did some bad things. Is he the terrible person that Donald Trump tries to make him? Absolutely not. Like, that is a huge projection from Trump's own shadow. But is he a perfect politician? No. And he he was part of a system that perpetuated where we're at now. And maybe he did the best he could within the system that he was within. But I think that it's important for us not to deify people in the past or to completely demonize them. I think that we just need to look at them as human beings and judge them on the merits of what they did and have some clarity around it. That's why, like, at the time, I was very, very excited about, hey, we got the first Black president. That's amazing. He has some really great ideas, it sounds like. And that was from the perspective of the knowledge that I had in that moment. I know a little bit of different things now. His solutions weren't the end-all solutions that maybe we hoped that they were. It didn't really solve capitalism. So here we are now having to utilize some different methods. Let's see. Devin says another way to conceptualize that, it's the sun lights up your whole natal chart every year. It conjoins every single piece. There you go. I love it. I love it. I really like that last sentiment, Devin. Yeah, me too. This is I like that. The organ of perception, they call the sun, lighting things up, being able to shine light on things, create awareness. That's why we talk about each decan that the sun's moving through, because it's going to create a spotlight on that particular area, but it is also casting its light all around so that we can see how all of the other pieces are going to fit together. Rose says, Hillary, Biden, and Obama live rent-free in the orange cottage cheese brain. I mean, yeah, because at the end of the day, he was popular for a long period of time. And if nothing else, what Donald Trump desires is to be popular. And when he's not getting the same popularity ego boost that he's perceiving someone else getting, he lashes out and tries to demonize that person. It's an ego weakness on his part. So see it for what it is. You know, don't take the bait from a narcissist, and we'll move on with our lives. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on in the chart here. Man, this is an Aries moon experience today, huh? Getting all fired up about things, telling personal stories. We've got some subjective perspectives. We got some universal perspectives. Got a lot of yang energy, but here we go. So the first thing that's really happening during the sun's movement into the third decan of Pisces is Jupiter's stationing direct. So if you see here, March 10th, I think it's kind of at the end of the day. So we have March 11th on our screen here, but that's just to show you that now the numbers are black instead of red. Red numbers in AstroGold, in the way that I have it set up, indicate a retrograde planet or body. So now we have Jupiter stationing direct 15 degrees of Cancer in a degree of its exaltation near the fixed star Sirius, which is a very important fixed star that speaks towards immortality, attempts towards immortality, but also was an indicator in ancient Egyptian society about the return of the fertility to the Nile River Valley. Around the time that Sirius would be prominent in the sky, the Nile River Valley would flood, bringing together new sediment that eventually the water would recede, and then you'd have fertile farmland. So it was a really important fixed star for bringing forth fertility. There's also some significations with Sirius around this search for the immortal, the timelessness. So there may be something in your life that you're feeling like as a return to fertility, a flood of fertile waters coming in as Jupiter stations direct, but also that have far-reaching types of ramifications. Things where you might be attempting to do something timeless that live beyond you, that preserve some kind of immortality, and maybe make your little stamp on the world, right? Okay. So Jupiter stations direct. It's going to start screaming pretty fast through Cancer after that and move into Leo by the summer. So enjoy that exalted Jupiter while it is still there. Now, when we go to the 11th, we have the last quarter moon. You can see that on the screen here, with the moon at about 20 degrees of Sagittarius. Okay, here's the 20-degree Sagittarius sun, or moon, squaring the sun in Pisces. Really, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the broadcast, but the last quarter moon in Sagittarius 3, remember Sagittarius 3 has the 10 of Wands syncretized with it. The 10 of Wands shows someone who's like trying to get to the finish line, carrying a huge bundle of sticks. And he's driving himself past his limits. There's a spirit in that decan called a Nanke, which is the force that compels the earth to spin on its axis. Austin Coppock calls that decan the horse's skull. So really what we're looking at in Sagittarius 3 is pushing our bodies to the limit to complete a goal. Now, when we have a last quarter moon, a waning moon instead of a waxing moon, we may be, I have started to interpret this as we need to release some of the energy of the decan to achieve the goal of the sun. Okay, let me repeat that. We need to release some of the energy the moon's moving through in a waning moon to achieve the goal of the sun. The opposite can be true when the moon is waxing. We need to increase the quality of what is going on with the moon and in the decan it's going through to achieve the goal of the sun. Okay, because the moon is collecting the sun's light. All right. So how do we mix this together? How do we synthesize this? We're trying to achieve the emotional idealism that requires spiritual sacrifice with the sun in Pisces 3. We may be needing to release the physical desire to carry all of the burdens ourselves. So if you get to a last quarter moon in Sagittarius 3, you may really be starting to get clear on what your vision is. You might be starting to get clear on what sacrifices you've been making to achieve that vision. You may also be realizing that you've been trying to carry the entire burden yourself and that you can't do that anymore. This is a great last quarter moon for learning how to delegate some responsibilities to be able to achieve the dream. So reduce some of your burdens, learn to delegate. Don't push yourself physically beyond your limits. Start reducing the desire to do that. Devin says, Sirius in Babylonian culture was Inanna's bow of justice. So maybe we'll start to see justice in the collective. I love that. We're seeing kind of a justice held in check, at least in America. We've seen like all of these like revelations of corruption, but nothing done about it. Maybe when Jupiter starts to station direct, we will have the justice that we are seeking. I hope so. Okay. So that's our last quarter moon. On the 13th, Mars conjoins the North Node. Here we have an increase in martial energy conjoining the North Node. Now, remember what we said earlier about Mars when it ingressed into Pisces. Mars is a planet that likes to sever and separate. It is trying to help us remove the dead weight. So wherever Mars, to me, that's what Mars's highest abilities are. To take action, to remove something from our life that's no longer serving us. It's the garbage collector, you know what I mean? It's the editor. It's the saying, hey, you got to return this to the earth. You got to get rid of this part to make this part healthy again. To me, Mars in this North Node conjunction says you have to remove some old belief systems. You have to remove some old repetitive narratives in your life. Okay, this is going to help us to sever and get us out of the labyrinth that Austin Coppock calls the first decan of Pisces. It's going to say, hey, you're lost in this old story. You're lost in the depression of feeling stuck in this old narrative. Take some action to cut that old belief system out of your life. Take action to find a higher purpose. If what you've been doing for your whole entire life is not working, individually or collectively, it's time for us to write a new story. To be able to do that, you need to release old illusions. So piggybacking off of what Devin just said about Sirius being the bow of justice in ancient civilizations in Babylonian culture, right? Let's say we do have the bow of justice starting to move forward. That may cause us to start questioning some of our sacred cows, some of our deeply held beliefs about the ability of people in power to act on our best interests, or the myths and narratives of if we do things this certain way, we're going to create prosperity, good fortune, etc. The myth that I'm trying to dismantle for myself and others is that an economic system that is based on debt, usury, unnecessary competition, and exploitation of developing nations and people of color is not a fair and just system that is sustainable, that exploits the earth's resources unsustainably. That's not going to work anymore. That is something I'm attempting to dismantle, like Mars in the first decan of Pisces, so that we can liberate ourselves to create something that will be just, that will feel good. I don't know about any of you here, but how many of you actually feel good about your role in economic society right now? How many of you feel like you're like, yeah, you know, this economic system is definitely working for me. I feel good about the work I'm doing. I feel good about where I'm at financially. I feel good about being able to afford my life. I feel good about the work that I have to do to get what I need. Some of you may feel like you're feeling okay about it, but I'm going to assume that a greater portion of you are like, this isn't working for me. Things are expensive. Can't afford to do what I want to do. I can't afford the emotional and spiritual costs of the things that they're asking me to do to be able to make a living anymore. Like as we get further and further into enshittification, we are being asked to do more and more bullshit, right? To earn a living. We have to use technology that destroys the planet and destroys our brains and makes the wealth gap even wider. We have to be terminally online to be able to please some algorithm that's set up to keep us terminally online. We may have to, hawk products that we don't believe in, or that take up valuable natural resources and destroy ecosystems and other people's cultures. I mean, there's so many things that are being asked to do that are just like, that's an old story. Why would we want to keep perpetuating this? So Mars conjoining the North Node, powerful moment, right? Javier says, I'm not, right? Not happy with this system. Okay. Rose says, I was told the next 2 years would be messy. I'm equating it with the actual labor process. Right. Right. If it's quicker, then we'll celebrate sooner. Maybe so. I've been talking to some of my off-grid friends. I have an off-grid friend in Australia, and they were talking about some mundane astrologers talking about currency collapse in 2028. And if we keep going at this rate, yeah, that's a very real possibility. So if you want to mitigate the pain of that, start thinking of the solutions now, right? Okay. Mercury emerges as the morning star. Let me check his notes. Yes. Is the morning star on the 15th and immediately conjoins Mars. So let's go to the 15th. And you see here Mercury conjoining Mars, emerging from under the beams. So there will be a martial quality to the mercurial messages that are coming through this moment of phasis. So again, this could be a lot of questions about maritime conflicts or ocean challenges. This could be a lot of questions coming up about how potential overconfidence, I guess, could be another thing. How maybe we are trying to do something before we're ready to fly, before we actually have the skills to carry something out. That could be another, and showing us the consequences of doing so. So that's something on the 15th to keep aware of. Mars will emerge as the morning star. Yep, right after that. Okay. So here you can see Mars at 10 degrees, 10 or 11 degrees. That's why it's tricky. You can kind of see it, but it's like, oh, the minutes aren't matching up. That's why AstroGold needs to calculate this for me. But anyway, you can see Mars emerging as the morning star, 11 degrees of Pisces on the 16th. Okay. And this is another type of experience where we can see what has been brewing beneath the surface or behind the scenes start to become visible. So let's say that there was a conflict that a seed had been planted on November the 13th, 6 degrees Sagittarius. Mars went under the beams of the sun, November the 13th. That was when the old cycle was starting to decay. We had a Cazimi moment, a seed planted at 19 degrees of Capricorn on January the 9th. Mars will emerge as the morning star on the 16th at 11 degrees of Pisces. So take a look back at January 9th to see what seed might have been planted that will start to become visible, especially in the Scorpio and Aries area of your life, but through the language of Pisces. Okay. Now, collectively, this could be like some kind of conflict that was seeded around January 9th that is also starting to become visible. Unfortunately, when Mars emerges from the beams, sometimes that shows us like potential international conflicts and, escalations in war and things of that nature. It doesn't have to be that, but that is not unprecedented. Rose says, right before St. Patrick's Day. There you go. St. Patrick's Day. Growing up in a college town, or like being young in a college town, and being a musician while I was young in a college town, and playing a few gigs on this day. I hate that holiday. I think it's the most useless, stupid holiday. It's just like an excuse for people to get drunk and act like idiots. What I do enjoy about that day is my partner makes a really mean corned beef and cabbage. So we do eat some good food on the day, but I just hide at home during that day because there's so many drunks on the road. Yeah, drive the snakes out. That's the original intention behind it, right? Like St. Patrick driving the snakes out of Ireland. Although I will say this, I have read and potentially wonder if the snakes out of Ireland were actually like immigrants, and are we celebrating like the driving out of people that just didn't look like them or that were immigrating or things like that? Like, I have questions. I have questions. I'd have to do more research on that, right? Okay. So Mars emerging as the morning star. Keep an eye out for things related to your Scorpio and Aries chart placements. It's pretty important for the collective because we've got this stellium that's starting to stack up in Aries in particular. So think about Saturn and Venus, and its host Mars is emerging, a visible manifestation of it. Okay, yeah, I knew I was remembering this in some way. Devin says they were actually pagans. So another another fucking reason not to like St. Patrick's Day is that they were, pretty much, so it's a celebration of the destruction of pagan, culture. And I got, as somebody who loves nature and practices astrological magic, and it's rooted in paganism. So not my favorite holiday. Let's just put it in that regard. I'm thinking more for Dumpy reading the poem about the snake. I don't understand that sentence, but it is getting late in the broadcast. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just getting punchy. And if I don't keep going, I'm not gonna make it. All right. So St. Patrick's Day, Mercury retrograde conjoining the North Node. Okay. Mercury is going to be at about 8 to 9 degrees of Pisces, conjoining the North Node on St. Patrick's Day. Mercury retrograde in Pisces is already somewhat of a challenging placement for linear thinking. I can only imagine with the alcohol culture that this holiday seems to engender, that people will be missing some appointments and traveling will be a little bit fraught with delays and or peril. So take my Cancer 2 sun advice. Stay in your house this day if you are able. There's certain days I avoid driving. It's New Year's Eve and New Year's Day and this day. I just would prefer just to like hide in my house and not be around the chaos. Okay. Oh my God, Trump quotes I am the snake poem all the time. Okay. Right. So I was wondering if it was just me or if I was kind of not understanding it. So anyway, new moon in Pisces 3 on the 18th after this day. Here we have, I'll go straight to this is the moon and the sun at 28 degrees Pisces. The moon, the degree of exaltation, or very close to it for Venus. Mars is co-present. Mercury retrogrades conjoining the North Node. Jupiter is hosting this direct. Even though Mars is co-present and Mercury is retrograde in Pisces, I like this new moon as having some very fortunate aspects to it because the host of it is just in such good position. The host is trine. The host, Jupiter, is in its exaltation, very, very close to its degree of exaltation, and finally direct. I think this could be the moment where we start seeing the seeds planted for the actual dream starting to manifest, and the ability to start bringing it into the real world. So I'm feeling kind of positive about this one. It's also making a sextile to Uranus, so maybe trying to do things in a way that is innovative could also be supported. So some positive things here. And that brings us to our spring equinox. Okay, so before we get to the spring equinox, let's do a stretch. And do me a huge favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, Support Third Coast Mojo. If you have a few extra bucks lying around, buy yourself a Jupiter and Cancer oil or a new Glamour soap or something like that. That also supports the work that I do here, and then you get something cool with astrologically elected magic. She makes these really amazing custom oils based on your natal chart too. She's been working on that this afternoon and getting some of those out the door, and they're awesome. She's amazing. Support Tanya. By supporting Tanya, you're also supporting the channel, and thank you so much for those of you who have been interacting with that material. Okay, we got one more decan to go. Y'all hanging in there? We're at the 3-hour mark. It's almost dinner time around me. We're in Aries 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to start manifesting Aries 1, which we're going to move much faster. So Aries 1, we're going to dig deep for this one. We've talked a lot about Aries 1 in regards to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Aries 1, the axe, collateral damage, swinging yang energy to get the seed to the surface. It's a very martial decan. It has the host of Aries in general is Mars, but this is also the face ruler here. Book of Thoth and Book T call it the Lord of Dominion. You see here in the Two of Wands, Alexander the Great or some figure like him holding a globe. There are lots of Decanic authors that speak towards this person trying to figure out which new territory to conquer. There's also Decanic authors that speak towards saying, to be able to make a new start, sometimes the first step is rejecting that which you are not. If you think about the seed husk exploding from the surface, what this little seed, what the little plant is doing, it's rejecting its container. It's saying, this was good at one point. This protected me at one point. Maybe the womb of Pisces or Pisces 3 was protective, the collective, the seed husk. But now we have to say, no, I need to split it open. I need to escape. I need to liberate to be able to grow more. So Aries 1 says, I need to reject that which is not me so I can continue the process of growth. So a lot of the equinox, beginning of the equinox, spring equinox energy is saying, this is not working anymore. We need to be able to bust through the surface to be able to continue our process of growth and of whatever our role is within the cycle. Now, I've had some real interesting opinions on growth and decay lately, reading Charles Eisenstein's Sacred Economics. Perpetual growth is toxic. Growth without decay is inharmonious. But this area of the zodiac in this time of year, growth is appropriate. Does that make sense? We are coming out of the winter where growth isn't necessarily always supported. It's a time for rest. It's a time for releasing that which isn't serving us anymore and restoring up energy for the new cycle. Here's the time where growth is supported and actually required, and oftentimes to be able to keep moving on our journey. What we don't want to do is get stuck in the conflict point where we say, to be able to continue to grow, I have to keep rejecting everything around me. A lot of times Aries 1 folks will be like, I have to reject this, and I reject you, and I reject this, and blah, 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 blah. And they just get in fights all the time. See, these are my fighting fingers. Can you imagine, like, as an Aries person, be like, I'm going to fight with you, but I'm going to do jazz index fingers. Right? So how do we get the energy and the yang energy necessary to make the new start, to reject that which we are not, so that we can move forward into the next stage of it, which is saying, now this is who I am. I'm not this, but I am making a declarative statement that this is who I am. And now, in moving towards the third decan of Aries, then you get people on board with your vision. You say, isn't it attractive where I'm going? Why don't you come along with me? So all important stages of growth, right? I was laughing at my jazz index fingers, I think. Okay. So let's take a look at what's going on at this spring equinox, because it's usually a very important moment that astrologers are very curious about. Aries ingress charts are really important mundane astrology type of experiences. Now, I'm not going to do an Aries ingress chart because it would change based on your location. But I can say that there's some particularly interesting qualities when the sun is moving into Aries. And first of all, we have to look at Mars being in Pisces too and hosting the sun now. Okay, so a lot of the martial energy is going to be directed towards this is a little bit nerve-wracking to me. We have so many planets that are going to be moving through Aries where we want to take action. But the host that is providing resources is moving through a decan that is like, screw the details. We're just going to kind of take the leap. We don't really know if we're ready yet. And I have a feeling that there's going to be the collateral damage is going to come through people overestimating their abilities. And I would warn you to that. With Mars hosting this huge stack up in Pisces, you may be trying to take action based on a lack of knowledge. And I would encourage patience with that. Now, there will be some things that you have to start where you don't have all the information, and you just have to have faith in the outcome. But also just be careful, because that decan of Pisces, the little guy that was trying to drive the chariot of the sun, he crashed. He got blown out of the sky by Zeus's thunderbolts and said, hey, you're creating all this destruction. You know, you're not ready to do this, and you're hurting everyone because of that. So I guess I would give you a warning not to be destructive with overconfidence. Make the new start, let go of attachment to the how, but make sure that you're not acting out of just a blind confidence that may actually end up hurting other people. Okay. All right. Mercury stations direct on the spring equinox. So here is Mercury now direct in black instead of red. So an important movement where we're going to feel the impetus to take action, and then Mercury is going to help support the intermediary transactions of taking action. Mars is going to trine Jupiter on the 21st. Okay, so Mars is making the trine with Jupiter. This is where action is meeting the supportive, fertile environment to protect that action. I think that this is a pretty positive aspect, that the actions that we take are, even though we may not have all the information, we may not have all the knowledge, we may be a little bit of a sorcerer's apprentice, we kind of have a protective guide. You know, we've got a Gandalf, we've got a Prometheus, we've got somebody that's like, we know that you're not quite ready, but we're gonna make sure that you don't hurt somebody with this. And I think that this Mars Jupiter trine is speaking towards that. The sun will conjoin Neptune on the 22nd. Okay, so here's the sun conjoining Neptune around 1 degree, okay, of Aries. Again, another really important type of energy for having clarity about what you're doing, rather than just falling under the illusion of doing something because you hope that it's the right thing to do. It's very, Neptune can also be very dissolving of solar vitality. I think that this could be another time where we kind of have a power outage almost. I think that, imagine like the sun is very fiery, but Neptune is very watery. Like it could be like just a dousing of our solar flames on some level. But again, Neptune can also be this search for salvation in something. And maybe we think that our salvation is going to come through severing ourselves from some kind of thing that we see as an oppressive collective. Now, I think part of that is realistic. Some of it may not be. I'm having to work through this myself. Like my brain right now says, how do I change the entire economic system for the world? And that may be slightly unrealistic in the short term, when I have to, like, you know, contribute to my family paying my mortgage, and with actual currency, and buying food at the grocery store, things of that nature. Like there may be some good intentions with some of this, but we may have to make sure that we're still keeping one foot on the ground while we are trying to be aspirational about these things as well. Mindful baby steps, Rose says. Absolutely. I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Mercury will conjoin the North Node again here, direct, at 8 degrees on the 23rd. So Mercury is just hanging out with that North Node, a real increase for Mercury. North Node increases desire. So there might be a real powerful desire to ask questions, which is a Mercury ruled kind of thing, on our stories that we accept as beliefs that create our reality. So pay attention to the questions that come up about the assumptions that you are making based on previously held beliefs. I think that's always a good exercise, but this could be a time where those instincts are really, really powerful. That brings us to the first quarter moon on the 25th. So here is the first quarter moon at about 5 degrees of Cancer. Now, remember when we talked earlier about waning moons, and when we were trying to decrease the quality that the moon was working through to create the impetus of the sun. Now, when we have a waxing moon, we are trying to, I think, increase and utilize the qualities of the place that the moon is moving through to be able to carry out the agenda of the sun, because it is collecting the sun's light. So we broke down the agenda of the sun in Aries 1 on some level, to sever from the collective, to individuate, to make a new start, to plant seeds, to initiate, to break through the seed husk, to break through the surface, to start spreading our leaves and to grow and to promote healthy growth. To do so, you will have to utilize some of the energy of the moon moving through Cancer 1, which is working in cooperation and harmony with somebody. Check this out. So if we look at Cancer 1, here is the decan associated with this. It is a Venus-ruled decan. It's about mutually beneficial relationships and partnerships. So the tension that comes through that is we really want to just do something individually without asking permission and reject that which is not us. But to do so, we have to increase our ability to cooperate with others during this first quarter moon. There's tension there. There is some situation where you might be needing to make a new start, but you can't make a new start unless you get buy-in from someone else, okay? So that's the tension that you're trying to work through. To be able to plant the new seed of yang, you have to be receptive to some yin, okay? All right. That brings us to our Kazemi, which is happening on the same day, the 25th. Saturn Kazemi. So this is Saturn, okay, being renewed in the heart of the sun. So let's go back a little bit. Actually, the Kazemi for Saturn happens before the first quarter moon perfects. But they're happening so within a few hours of each other that they're kind of mixed together, blended together a little bit. Now, the Kazemi of Saturn is really important. This is where the new seed of Saturn's solar cycle, synodic cycle, is being planted. We had Saturn going under the beams with all the old cycle, the old order being dissolved and burned away under the beams of the sun. Now the furnace of the sun, the intention, the soul of the sun is infusing a new sense of purpose into the planet. Okay. Again, that could be one of two things, as I was intimating before. It could be the seed that says, here is what you have to do to be bound to your new start. This is what is binding you to rejecting the collective to be independent. Here is what is you're binded to make a new start. You're forced to make a new start, whether you like it or not. Here are the actions that you are bound to, right? Could also be just planting the seed for a reckoning around excessive yang. This could also be showing us and casting a spotlight on how Saturn is going to start rebalancing the energy of Aries. Let me repeat that. Saturn is a planet of Nemesis. Nemesis is a goddess that brings consequences, but also increases that which is lacking and decreases that which is excessive. Wherever Saturn is moving through, it's doing that action to that area of the zodiac. So this could also be the initial moment of rebalancing Aries energy. Maybe in some of our lives, we are too excessive with our yang. Maybe we're too aggressive. Maybe we're too patronistic. Maybe we're too misogynistic or something like that. That is an abuse of Aries energy. Maybe we are impatient, and this is the moment of reducing those qualities. For others of us, we may be lacking some of the initiative quality. We may be stuck in our heads or our hearts, where we're just stuck in our feelings or in our idealized worlds, but we actually need to take action on those to make them real. And that could be what rebalances us through Saturn and Aries, of saying, you know what? We need to just be a little bit more aggressive. We can't think through every single piece of this. The world's going to pass us by if we just continue to stare at our navel and not do anything about it. People will get hurt if we don't actually take an action. That could be part of it. So take a good look in the proverbial mirror this month and say, what part of that do I need to increase? Where do I need to increase my tolerance for taking a risk? And then where do I need to reduce my impatience? Where do I need to reduce and be more mature about my anger, about my individuality, about my self-serving decisions? There's been plenty. I will tell you, friends, the last few years have shown me how utterly selfish many people can be. It's also showed me how self-sacrificing some amazing people can be. But there's been a lot of people that I thought were amazing, unselfish people that made so many selfish decisions in the past few years that were saying that I'm unwilling to take any personal risk or have any of my personal freedoms curtailed for the sake of anybody else. And that's really been frustrating to witness. I'm speaking for those of those of you who aren't familiar with my inference. I'm talking specifically about the pandemic and about making the refusal for a lot of people to make personal sacrifices for the health of others. And as somebody who has made an enormous amount of sacrifice for others during these past few years so that other people wouldn't get sick, or so that I would taking measures to keep people around me healthy, it's very frustrating to me to see people continue to be like, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, and I don't care if it affects other people. It's really strange to me. Like, the pandemic was something that you would think that something like that would have made people really understand how interconnected we are. It is an air age truth that sort of dissolves some of the illusionary boundaries we thought we had with one another. We literally can be in the same room with somebody and breathe the same air and have consequences from not protecting each other. And that was a hard lesson. And I think a lot of people out there need to start thinking about the consequences of never making any sacrifice for the collective, of saying, I will never make a sacrifice if it limits my personal quote unquote rights or freedoms or beliefs or whatever. I think that's so fucking selfish. And I think this is a moment for rebalancing those types of things too. There will be times where we have to take more risks and to learn to stand on our own 2 feet. There will be other circumstances where it will say, hey, you've been making a lot of selfish choices, and here is the consequences of those selfish choices. And now it's time to start thinking a little bit more about collective benefit. So a really powerful moment for that, I think. Rose says, Wile E. Coyote with wheels spinning until now. Yeah, what? Some Wile E. Coyote energy is interesting. Yeah. Okay. One more thing happening in the month, and then we'll wrap it for the day. Venus moves into Taurus at the end of the month. Kind of a really nice little end of the month, I think. Venus is going to be improving its condition at the end of the month. Okay? Moving into a place that it really loves to be, out of its exile, into its home sign of Taurus. If we had been having trouble having patience or having trouble accepting the good things in life, Venus in Taurus helps us to be patient. It helps us to connect with receiving in a way that I think is a little bit healthier, rather than feeling like we have to pursue all of our desires with Venus and Aries. This is teaching us that sometimes we just have to be open to letting those things come into our life. And I just think that this is a really nice kind of a sort of starting to balance and mitigate some of the big stack up that we've had in Aries. Now we are going to have a big stack up in April that I want to briefly touch on. Yeah, Rose says all rights come with responsibilities too. Exactly. Yeah. So if we look at April, I won't bemoan the Venus and Taurus. The Venus and Taurus is one of my favorite transits, to be honest with you. It just is, we could see beauty in nature. We can see beauty in our senses. It can bring us some really nice experiences. So hold on to that as something that could be really, really nice. April, full moon in Libra, new moon in Aries, Mars and Venus and Mercury moving into Aries. Then we have this big stack up stellium in Aries. Saturn, Mars, and Mercury conjoining at about 7 degrees of Aries in the middle of the month. Okay. Really powerful. Someone pointed out the other day that 7 degrees of Aries is the degree of Jeffrey Epstein's moon. So keep an eye out for some manifestations around that. It's also the degree that Saturn is going to retrograde back to and station direct in December. It's going to station direct right on that degree. So really, we'll talk about that as we move forward into April astrology. But let's deal with March first. Venus and Uranus are going to move into Gemini during April. The sun's going to move into Taurus. And then we have a number of squares with planets to Jupiter and Pluto. Okay, so there's going to be planets squaring from Aries to Cancer with Jupiter. And then we're going to have all these other planets squaring Pluto from Taurus to Aquarius. So things to keep an eye on coming up. That's what I've got for the astrology of March. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for sitting through some of the rants. Thank you for adding in your stories and your wisdom. I've got 2 more things for you before we wrap for the day. I've got a hexagram. And the hexagram I have for you is number 56, the Wanderer. I've got an animal for you too. So 56 translates to the wanderer, or traveling, unsettled, tentative, uncertain, in transition, exploring, trying new experiences. So this hexagram is really about being in a foreign land and really not being a little bit out of place. And when we're starting all these new things, we might not really feel stable yet. We may have to carry ourselves with a little bit of caution. Jack Balkin says, you are in a period of transition. Okay. The Judgment says, the wanderer, in small matters, success. Perseverance brings good fortune to the wanderer. You're in a period of transition. Things are not yet certain, and it is not yet clear how you fit into them or what your identity is supposed to be. The text compares your situation to that of a wanderer who is traveling through a strange land. The wanderer is a sojourner. He does not expect to stay long, but he is not quite sure where he is going next. He knows very few people. He is not exactly sure what the local customs are or whom he can trust. He does not completely understand what is expected of him. Because his situation is uncertain, he is circumspect and cautious. Remember, we talked about the need for caution rather than just overestimating our abilities with Mars moving through the second decan of Pisces, right? He associates only with reliable and trustworthy people and does not get involved in anything underhanded or unscrupulous, much less anything that would get him in trouble with the local authorities. Instead, he tries to learn as much as he can from his new surroundings, and in this way, he learns something about himself. Apply these principles to your own life. You are on a journey whose destination is not yet determined. This is not a time to make definite commitments. Instead, it is a time to explore. You need to gather new information, gain new perspectives, and experiment with new ways of living and meet new people. Don't be afraid to try something different. You won't know what the right path is until you try a number of different possibilities. Be flexible and adaptable and willing to learn. However, precisely because you don't know yet where you're going, you must also be politic and discreet. When you find yourself in new situations with new people, be respectful but also reserved. It will take time to know whom you can really trust. Try to associate with good people and make friends with those you respect. This will help keep you out of harm's way and ensure that you will get the most out of your new experiences. Relish the uncertainty of this time. You have a wonderful opportunity now to expand your horizons and make important connections. You may well encounter new people and new experiences that will change your life, but don't do anything that is beneath you and don't compromise your integrity just to fit in or get others to like you. Instead, just be yourself. If you behave with courtesy and discretion, you will attract the right sort of people. A sincere and friendly approach will meet with a natural and positive response, no matter where you are. When people go out of their way to help you, make sure that you let them know that you appreciate their generosity and then do your best to help them in return. In this way, you will begin to form the bonds of reciprocity that will help you through this period of transition. I just want to take that opportunity to thank all of you today, especially those of you who caught any errors that I may have had in my delineations or in my notes. Also, those of you who have brought to my attention some ideas, maybe before I was able to get online with them, like my own brain getting online with it. I appreciate the community that we have here. I appreciate all of you. Lauren is saying, I got to go. It's been a good cast today, Spencer. I like your fire lately. It's honest. It's honest to where you're at, and you're not alone in it. It's helping us all process our emotions. That's the gift of having a Cancer friend. I love it. And I want to thank you, Lauren, in particular, for turning me on sometimes to the challenges of AI. The challenges of accepting a new technology before I really understand its ramifications. Usually not something that I'm into, but you really gave me a lot of things to think about with it that I wasn't considering at the time. And to thank Rose and for pointing out some interesting things, and Javiera today, and Devin for pointing out morning and evening star things. We have to be willing to allow ourselves flexibility when we're going through these new things together, when we're sharing all of these emotions that we're feeling to help each other. And I hope that we're doing that here today. So thank you for being a support system during the wanderings and meanderings that we do here. Let's do an animal. All right. Rawia is here. So much gratitude to you, Spencer, and your community from down under. Rawia, thank you. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for joining me from just a beautiful place in this world. I know that a lot of the challenges that we experience here in America, I think people in Australia are experiencing a lot of similar issues. I have a lot of friends in Australia, and a lot of the things I hear there are actually very similar talking points. I think America and Australia have a lot in common. I really do. I think that the expansiveness of the land, the colonial lineage, the reckoning of trying to reckon with our past and sometimes the abuses of indigenous cultures, but also just a lot of innovative spirits in both Americans and in Australians. I think at the core, they're both people that have a lot of hope and heart and big dreams. So Rawia, thank you for being here with us today. Appreciate you here. And let's continue to have these conversations as an international community. Rose says, Wanderer, Coyote, Kokopili. Yeah, potentially. I've got an animal for you. It's not a coyote. Coyote's interesting because coyote shows us some of our follies, I think, sometimes. From my study of animals, symbolism, coyote is like an adaptable animal that is a survivor, but also kind of goes on to greater folly after making a mistake and kind of is his own worst enemy sometimes, but shows us the benefits of adapting for survival. The animal I have for you today is another interesting one. So let's take a look at this. It is the elephant. Look at this beautiful picture, this beautiful creature. I think this is a stabilizing force for us, the elephant. I'm going to read to you from Animal Frequency, as I often do, the Melissa Alvarez. I brought it with me today. My beautiful partner, Tanya, helped me the other day when I forgot the book. But today, we're going to talk about this beautiful creature. Elephant symbolizes inner strength, a wide range of emotions, and the physical ability to overcome obstacles. Elephant lives in a herd led by the oldest female. It is loyal to the other members of the herd, especially newborns, and all take part in teaching, loving, and nurturing the young. Each one would risk its life to protect another family member. Elephant has an incredible memory, and even if separated for years, it will still remember another elephant it has previously known. Elephant grieves and can shed tears just like we do. It has a talent for commitment, communication, confidence, being connected to ancient wisdom, deep emotions, gentleness, inner strength, intelligence, joyfulness, keen senses, longevity, loving nature, loyalty, patience, physical strength, sociability, telepathic, tough exterior, trusting. Sometimes it has challenges around jealousy, being overly sensitive, rage, revenge, stubbornness. When an elephant appears, it means to be more communicative and committed to your personal relationships. Take time to really listen to what others are saying. What feelings hide behind their words? Be gentle in nature and intelligent in your choices, and willing to be deeply dedicated to the person. Once you truly listen, you will develop a deep understanding of one another. Don't assume the people you care about know how you feel. Tell them. Show them. Value their presence in your life. Elephant means to push obstacles out of the way. Don't let anything hold you back from what you want to achieve. Elephants tend to only look forward, which is a sign not to have narrow focus, but instead to look all around you and be aware of your environment. Elephant gives you its determination. Nothing can stop you from achieving your dreams. You push past obstacles that stop others in their tracks. Elephant can assist you when you need to connect with ancient wisdom, which can help you advance your spiritual growth. If you're venturing down a path of spiritual enlightenment, elephant is the perfect animal to guide you. Elephant's physical strength can help push out obstacles out of your way, and its inner strength can see you through difficult times. Elephant helps when you need to be silent in your approach. It's a heavy animal, but it walks with graceful movements and little noise. If you're unsure about sharing your emotions or how to express yourself, elephant can show you the right way to move forward. If you've taken a new source of study, elephant can help you to understand and remember information through its high intelligence. Elephant encourages you to dig up memories from your past. Remember, we talked about that with Pisces 1. Look at them with an impartial viewpoint and then release them. Holding on to some memories can hold you back from future growth, right? To be able to move forward with these Aries impulses, we need to examine where we've been in the past. Take time to enjoy water activities. It is essential to your survival. Frequency. Elephant's energy is wise and peaceful. It feels like as if you're standing on an edge of a cliff, looking out across a vast tundra, secure in the knowledge that all is as it should be. It feels like the joy of an unexpected hug, a warm, tight, and filled with love. It sounds like an elephant's trumpeting a short, high-pitched call to come home. As wanderers, maybe we need to feel grounded. As wanderers, we might be visiting a new land, but what I have found when I've visited foreign places or places that were strange to me is that if I'm respectful and I ask questions and I give what I want to receive, which is kindness, support, generosity, people open up. And I think elephant can teach us that. They're really social animals, can help ground us in these challenging times. We talk about expressing our emotions in ways that can be healthy. And I've heard many of you say today that as a Cancer astrologer, Cancer sun, that I help by expressing my emotions, I'm helping you to feel your feelings and emotions. And part of that, I think, is through Cancer being ruled by the moon. What we do is we're collecting the feelings around us and we reflect it back into our environment. I've been really spicy lately, but the collective is feeling these feelings. It's feeling anger, it's feeling sadness, it's feeling fed up. And I've just been marinating in this and it just comes back out. And maybe that allows you to feel like you can process those feelings and that it's okay to be a little bit fed up with the way things are, but also that it's okay to imagine something different. And we've been co-creating and imagining something different together over these last few hours. And just thank you so much for being a part of it. Let's continue to hold on to hope when it is appropriate. Okay, we got to have hope. But let's take action on that hope. Let's take action and not get so browbeaten by all of the challenges we see in life that we forget to take action, that we still can make a difference with each other. And it doesn't have to be a huge action. It can be a small action. It can be a small act of kindness in your local community, with a neighbor, with a friend, with a family member. It all matters. The universe is not as obsessed with scale as we think as human beings. You can make a big difference that has ripple effects through tiny movements. And I think that you don't have to be loud about it either. The elephant says we can move quietly within our communities, and it will make a big difference. So that, my friends, is what I have for you today. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for expressing some feelings and expressing your genius and your wisdom. Roia says, we definitely have a lot in common with our history and culture. Yeah, in Australia and America, definitely are kindred spirits. And again, I found a lot of recognition and friendship with people there. And I hope everyone over there is doing okay too. I know that you're facing a lot of, like I said, similar challenges with the environment, with forest fires, with authoritarianism, with all of those things they're global phenomenons right now. And a lot of it is because of the repercussions of colonialism. And we're all inheriting that legacy, and we all have to reckon with it and figure out how to maybe dismantle it and start to bridge those gaps like we saw in Dances with Wolves, bridging the gaps to restore maybe even just a little bit of that indigenous wisdom that we would so benefit from in both of our cultures, American, Australian, etc. Listening to the indigenous people of the Americas, listening to the indigenous people of Australia. Such a rich culture that has, I think the folks there that are still connected to the land in wonderful ways, they still have an ensouled cosmos. And that's something I think we can really learn from. So thank you, friend. Rose says, I've watched the elephants go back and forth, go back to the place a friend passed, and they stop and remember and grieve again. Yes. Yes, they have great memories and they do grieve their losses. And I think we have to do so. We have to grieve our past. We have to acknowledge the challenges that came through it. We can't just sweep them under the rug or we're doomed to repeat it. I thought about changing my name to Can't Stop Rose. I love it. Thank you, Javiera. Really appreciate all of your teaching, Spencer. Grateful. Thank you, Javier. I appreciate you coming each week and just your attention. I appreciate you being here and your contributions to the chat and your perspective. I value each and every one of you that comes each week. It really is a blessing. Thank you, Rose, for your contributions in the chat too, and appreciate you. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you. Remember to be kind to one another. Try to make a difference in your communities. Try to start thinking collectively and how you can benefit the collective, because when you do so, you really are benefiting yourself as well. It really is amazing how those two things are really complementary. But let's band together and protect this beautiful planet and all the beauty that it has gifted us as human beings. Let's start to return that favor. Let's start to take that responsibility seriously. It starts through kindness. Be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Take good looks in the mirror and examine old beliefs that are no longer serving you. But don't self-eviscerate, Acknowledge when you made a mistake. Be willing to change. And then when you're be kind to yourself and be willing to change, it's going to make it easier for other people to change, and it's going to be easier for you and others to be kind to one another as you go through the changes together. All right? So that's what we've got. Take care, friends. Rose says go eat. I'm going to do that. Have a great month of March. I'll see you next week. Take care. Peace.